Recording.
So
Hello.
good.
This is the basic roster rundown of High Elves in Bretonnia. I'm going to start with Bretonnia because B becomes before H. That's my reasoning.
Yes.
Don't question it.
I am also here,
Yes,
where my builds are usually about a stone throw away from being a meme, but still functional.
it's close enough to functionality that it works usually.
Yeah.
Well, but what place to start then with the Lord? Where every army has to start with the Lord. Ironically, the first Lord is the Lord. He's not that good. He can basically just a budget version of Leon Kerr and Albric. He doesn't have any really unique items, like the Crown of Command can be useful to use on certain peasant infantry, but that's about all he brings to the table. Besides that, he's just a worse Albric or Leon Kerr. A
Well,
much
I
worse
guess
Leon Kerr and a slightly worse Bordelot.
you could use them as like a cheap lord, with the Empire General. You can put them on like Hippogriff.
Yeah, if you want to invest your money in other places, you can bring him as a
Yeah.
cheaper variant than the other ones. But if we see with him on that at 1800 with all his abilities, whereas him on that is a lot more expensive. Well, actually, if you that,
The big 1000.
you do get probably much better stats and obviously the regeneration that old Leon Kerr has.
Yeah.
Amongst some of the other better abilities. Next, fan favourite of old Ted, who isn't here to defend him, so I can tear into him as much as I want.
Oh wait, I love him too.
Oh no, never mind. Got somebody else to defend him.
He's literally got his own version of Sea Fang. Come on.
Yes, he does have his own version of Sea Fang, but I don't. This can be useful against like Elven factions, especially because you don't get many other wind spells in the old Bretonnian roster. It's like he says Sea Fang, and it also does Discourage as well, which can be pretty good. I just find him a bit too expensive for what he brings to the table sometimes.
Like he's good at like taking out specific targets if you want like a assassin against other flying lords.
Or just he's also very good to stick with the group thanks to his buff. They can give bonus 8 bonus versus large to all allies.
He's great to bring like actual like Pegasus or Hippogriff Knights on, because him plus one other unit can mess up any lord that's flying. If they have the poor wherewithal to decide to fight him, they die. Oh, look who's joined!
Oh, is it Ted finally? Too late. We're tearing into Albric.
Yes.
Get lost.
Yeah,
Don't worry, I was defending his honor.
There's a lady's on. Actually, no, it's not a lady. He's a lord.
He's a very fashionable lord. Look at that helmet. Look, he looks up to the side.
Should be noted that he doesn't have Blessing of the Lady, either.
Well, he's not a Grail Knight, so that makes sense.
What a beta.
Yeah.
Not even a Grail Knight. Why is he even a lord?
But yeah, in most cases...
Well, he's a Duke, but that was part of his lord that never get finished.
But yeah, like I said, it is usually best to bring him with another powerful flying unit, like the Pegasus Knights or Hippogriffs, because he will actually work well with them.
Giving them the old 8 bonus versus large, which most of them they do lack. Actually, no, the Pegasus do have bonus versus large, but the Hippogriff.
Yeah, the Hippogriff don't, but they're armor piercing, which is really good for them.
Giving them some bonus versus large.
I'd say you'd want to give them the Hippogriffs because he can actually buff them even more. And then, like, if you're against vampire counts, if they decide to bring some dipshit on a bird, or some guy on a dragon, they lose. They lose their lord because they don't have any range to shoot him in the sky.
So if you can get the air superiority, that could work pretty well.
Yeah.
Ideally, when it comes to Albric, he doesn't have any self-healing, so ideally you want to bring a life caster with him. That goes for most lords besides Leon Kerr and the Fae. Of course, the Fae being her own caster and Leon Kerr having regeneration, so you don't always have to bring a life caster with him, because he can often reach a healing cap on his own. But we'll move on to that later. That's basically it for Albric, I believe. You can put him on his mount options.
How did you get Ted's lord to rout while he was in the sky? Captain,
Whose lord did I rip?
Falafel said he got Ted's lord to run away.
You got to run away? What did you use?
Yeah.
What was he fighting? I'd imagine two Strigoi in the sky.
A Red Duke and Terrorgeist. Well,
yeah,
by itself.
That would be without itself, without any Hippogriff backup.
Yeah, if it was with Hippogriffs though, that might have been a very different story because the Hippogriffs do like 150 damage a pop, and there's like 20.
Is Captain?
I believe that's Skullkid.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Well, that happened because I know what one you're playing. You're talking about the game you submitted to Zerk, the one that we did together.
Oh, that one.
I didn't have Albric and the Hippogriffs on guard mode, so when I gave the attack order, on your lord, and your lord dove into the Blood Knights, Alberic,
Followed him.
with incredible zeal and bravery followed him
Bravery.
and killed himself, or got poked violently by the Blood Knights.
Absolute brave soldier going down.
Came down with a bad case
Yes,
of being
that's
dead.
often what you don't want to do, because you have that aerial superiority, throwing yourself into Blood Knights, which are a ground unit, which you could quite easily avoid or get some good flanks on. Probably not the best idea. So,
yeah.
Bad Ted. Anyway, on to the next Lord choice. Ted.
Did you mention that Alberic does have missile resistance?
How much of missile resistance? 15.
He has 15%.
15%.
Wow, that's so notable.
Most flat. Like,
I'm pretty sure every Lord has. Leon Kerr does as
Yeah.
well, dipshit.
Oh, sorry. I didn't notice that.
Oh wow,
the
that's
basic
pretty harsh
Lord
there,
has
Feel,
Willow.
feel dumb now.
Sorry, it was
Feel dumb
too
now.
harsh. There's Rapunzel has it, and she doesn't even have a shield.
Yeah, most lords
make
have
sense.
a 15% missile resist.
Gotrek has it, and he's shirtless.
Dumb. This is dumb. I feel dumb. This game is dumb.
And you're a Bretonnia main as well.
This is horrible.
That was kind of impressive that you pointed that out, but I was gonna say that
Anyway.
yeah, all lords and heroes tend to have a 15% missile resist.
Suddenly, Alberic is a little bit less impressive.
Moving on to Rapunzel the Lyoness. Pretty good armor-piercing Lord compared to the other ones, which you have to put on Hippogriffs basically to be armor-piercing. She will be armor-piercing no matter what you put her on. She's more of an anti-infantry Lord, but I noticed that this buff is very good. Plus 9 melee attack and plus 9 melee defense to everything in 40 meters range is a very large radius, and so she can be a serious buffing force if you're going for a heavy infantry build.
Yeah.
For whatever reason you'd be doing. Or just even a cav squad.
Or
If you have a big
like
blob of
two
cav.
or three questing knights. Yeah,
the more units
all
you're
sorts of
affecting with that
dangerous.
buff, the better, because that's 9 melee attack and 9 melee defense, which is a huge buff to be constantly activated around something.
It's like the orc war boss with his weapon, where he gives like plus 12 attack to everyone around him. They just hit more often, and they're able to defend more often, meaning they survive longer, which is what Bretonnian infantry is really bad at.
Typically, you'll see her on a horse. You can also bring her on foot if you, for some reason, are afraid of anti-large effects hitting her on her horse. For abilities, obviously you got that really powerful passive buff. This one is only really good for clearing out, like if you get her stuck in some cheap chaff, it can do some fairly good damage to the chaff, or if she's just trapped in anything, it can usually free her up. But it is still useful against any target because of that blinded debuff it applies. Minus 24 melee attack and minus 24 melee defense is basically an enfeebling foe. So if she's dueling something, don't be afraid to use that, because that will give them a major debuff and most likely help her win the fight. At the end of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't really use them against armor targets. It's quite crap against armor.
It's mainly just for clearing out, getting things out of the way, I mean.
It's like Verminous Retreat with the Skaven. It's meant to get out of a bad fight.
Along with the Sword of Lyoness, giving her plus 40 melee attack, basically, despite it being an anti-infantry Lord, that plus 40 melee attack will make her capable against anything. With all the weapon strengths you get, so you can really whack anything that comes, especially with the buff that Foot Lord's got. Even if you just put her on foot with this, she can go toe-to-toe with a lot of big armoured Lords that you wouldn't expect her to. Thanks to that powerful hitting force of 40 melee attack and the extra armor piercing and base weapon damage.
And also, she is fairly cheap.
Yes, and very cheap compared to most other. Well, actually, on foot, she's considering she doesn't have a flying option. That probably helps her become a lot more cheaper.
Yeah.
The basic prophetesses. Fun fact: this is now the only one that has Assault of. This is the only hero lord in the game that has Assault of Stone, because they took it off the Death Hag. Was it the Death Hag? Yeah, it's the River Troll Death Hag. So now this is the only way you can get Assault of Stone. Not much to say here really. It's basically just a caster, generic caster lord. Keep them away from anything. Yeah, just anything. Just keep them away from anything, because they're
Jesus
squishy.
Christ. 3430. That's awful.
Yeah, it's terrible. Like, yeah, keep them away from anything.
Basic marauders could kill this bitch.
Pretty much the laws you only really want to go for is really just Law of Life, but I mean these aren't recommended. I'd actually recommend the basic lord over these three.
Grab the damsel.
Yeah, these three aren't good. The only reason you want to bring them is I remember Assault of Stone. I remember getting hit by that with the River Troll Death Hag. Let me bring it again, because now this is the only way you can use it. Which is a good scroll to be fair, but this is the only way you can get it now on the 3 worst lords on the Bretonnian roster, arguably.
Yeah,
now,
you're better off with Fey Enchantress.
The boy himself, Leon Kerr. A lot of mount options. His regular usually you'll see him. Well, you can see him in everything, to be honest. You can see him in all fields except on foot. You don't see him on foot because he's not terribly good as a foot lord. He's much better going around supporting units with his buffs and his buff basically. But he's a very good duelist. Whether it be on horse, Royal Pegasus, you can fly him around with a squad of Pegasus, or get him after a caster because he doesn't have the armor piercing. He'd be better off going after a caster on a Pegasus, or you can throw him on his big Deathclaw, not Deathclaw, Bequeath. Is that how you pronounce it, Ted?
He's Deathclaw is Karl Franz's.
Yeah, David. Is it Bequeath? Is that how you pronounce it?
I'm not French, so someone who is French can
someone who's French.
Can ratify that, but I believe that is the correct pronunciation.
Basically, it's just a much better Hippogriff. For 150, you're getting so much better stats that it's usually worth to take him on Bequeath over a regular Hippogriff.
Did you? I wasn't quite paying attention when you were talking about the points. Did you mention that she was immune to psychology?
No, I did not. She is immune to
she
psychology.
Is.
That is
So is Llewyn.
quite helpful, yes. The young, but I don't think Albrecht is, no. But he would be if he
Albrict's
was on.
not, because he's just a crummy man. He's not a Chad Grail Knight like Llewyn.
No, yes.
Yeah.
Llewyn
he doesn't even have the Grail Knight defense buff.
Immune to psych. Yeah, he also, no matter what he's on, he gets Blessing of the Lady,
20%.
which an extra 20% physical resist is really helpful in most situations.
Yeah, Grail Knight units will have Blessing of the Lady, except for the Hippogriff Knights. I don't think they are necessarily Grail Knights, but they still have Blessing of the Lady.
They still get it.
They still get it.
They're just really favoured upon.
Yeah, because they don't have the Living Saints. Grail Knights will normally have the Living Saint bonus, but for some reason Hippogriff Knights don't, or at least it's not in their unit card. But they still have Blessing of the Lady.
Where are they?
It's just weird.
Yeah, they still have Blessing of the Lady, but they don't have the other one.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to Leonka. His abilities. This one is his key shining star. The fact he has regeneration. This can be incredibly helpful because obviously, especially when you start putting him on a flying lord, you can fly him away, and he will be regenerating that whole time. So you can really run him into combat, let him take some damage, and then get out quite quickly, and you don't really need to worry about him because he'll just heal over time, which is very helpful. Kana goes counteractive to his second ability, which gives immune to psychology everything map wide if his health drops below 50%. Also 8 melee attack, the other two buffs are alright as well. So if he drops that low, but often if he drops that low, he's going to start regenerating above it. So it kind of counteracts that, but you obviously don't want to be trying to get him onto low health, because that's not a good idea to do with your lord. But
as a pretty decent regen as well, I think the healing cap's about 2,000-ish, so that is quite a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of healing available himself.
Unless you get to the healing cap and you're below 15, it's like, oh.
Yeah, obviously that's a good situation where kicking this in, especially when you've got peasants and the likes, but usually by the end of the battle, or at the point where Leon Kerr is dying, usually most of your peasants are gone, more or less. So all you're really giving immune to psychology will be your expensive knight units, most of which already have immune to psychology. So it could be arguable. I say this one could be taken off because often you aren't getting the full use out of it because you're not letting Leon Kerr die instantly. Foe Seeker, just an extra speed buff. Stand your ground, usual buff you can apply. The Lion's Shield, very useful against pesky missile factions that want to try and shoot down your big bird, because 44% less damage from missile and magic resistance, especially when some missiles can be magic, and they do stack. It's on top of the already existing 15%. Can mean a lot of reduced damage from missiles, which can be his big threat because of how big of a target he is. Well, he has a shield if he's on foot or horse.
Oh wait, oh yeah. Yeah, if he's on a horse, he does have a shield.
Which would give an extra 35% from the front, so...
That would be like 90% block, man.
So definitely very good.
Such value.
When you've got such a big target as a big old hippogriff in the sky, you usually don't want him dying to missiles, so this can be a pretty good... This is the general abilities I take with Leon Kerr. His items, this one, it's very similar to the fact that he has regeneration. This can be used when he's flying around just to debuff an area. Similar to the, what is it? The Head of Blood Dragon Vampire Lord has Helm of Discord? Yeah, the Helm of Discord. Just being able to apply a huge debuff to everything around you is surprisingly useful, especially when it only has a 120 second, well, only. It's got a 2-minute recharge, but he doesn't have to be in combat to recharge it, so you can get that off for 38 seconds. You can heavily debuff a large area around him, and it usually pulls it off quite well. Anything to add about Leon Kerr? The man?
Really. He's just the man, the legend himself. You throw him into a fight and then turn it on and be like, well, what are you gonna do?
Yeah,
or like
can you
drop
stop
that stuff over like a spear line as your cavalry's about to slam into it.
Of course, one thing I forgot to mention so far, this will be the last time I mention it, is that hippogriffs, or the big birds, basically, yeah, the hippogriffs or whatever big creature, he's a big hippogriff as well, isn't he?
They're all armor piercing.
All armor piercing and terror causing. And considering this is basically the only source of terror for the Bretonnian roster, these can be quite key to get off.
Knight,
apart from the Green Knight, yeah, I think that's basically it. It's just, yeah, that's it. It's just the Green Knight, which is we'll get onto later, but not always the best option. But you want to bring a big old hippogriff because of that terror causing against factions that can be quite easily terror routed, like Greenskins, Skaven especially. You want those big old terror routes to
and in some cases the chaos as well, because
chaos as well.
Hit them with a charge, and then you throw in your demogriff.
Because for some reason the chosen of the demons of like Nurgle and Zinch just get spooked by a big bird. Big bird, they're like,
oh shit,
get out of there, boys.
I've seen chaos spawn, but this is fucked up.
This
man.
is too far.
Feathers.
Anyway, on to Ted's least favourite Bretonnian lord, despite actually arguably being the better, the Fey Enchantress.
We do have a question about the Foe Seeker.
Foe Seeker.
Is it viable to use the Foe Seeker for the Vigor mainly?
Often Foe Seeker, you can take it. I wouldn't want to limit the rest of my roster by Foe Seeker, so what I like to do is take it off, and then if I find I have money left at the end of the building cycle, I might add it back on. It's only really that helpful if you're planning on chasing things down, which often you are with a big old flying lord, so it can be worth it, but I wouldn't want to limit my army. I wouldn't want to be like getting to it and say, oh, I could get an extra unit of Questy Knights, but I'm like 70 gold short. So, but I don't want to drop Foe Seeker. You want to drop that Foe Seeker just so you have the funds to play with it, and then see if you have it at the end, and apply funds to Foe Seeker afterwards.
Catching someone is fine, but if you're down a knight unit or a more powerful knight unit, you're going to lose the combat anyway, so why would you need to chase anyone if you're going to lose?
Now, for the Fey, with two mount options, one mount option, or on foot. Well, on foot she levitates, so it's kind of weird saying she's on foot. The unicorn is basically just a way for her to get around faster. If you're worried about getting caught, which most of the time you are with the Fae, it's often a better idea to put her on a unicorn. She does get a small magic resistance. Well, actually a huge magic resistance. I think there's a base, and then because the unicorn usually applies 30%, but here it's applying 45%, so she could definitely take on a good swarm of magical damage quite well, which is especially because against Bretonnia you will often be bringing some magical damage because you want to get through that physical resistance that Grail Knight units, the Blessing of the Lady, so she could be quite a nasty surprise when all that magical damage becomes fairly useless when you put her on a unicorn. On foot she only has 25% magic resistance.
Yes, that's
but it's still an amount.
Spirit Leech is weak.
Yeah.
Spirit Leech would be weak because the problem is that each tick will do so little damage, or just wouldn't affect her.
Just wouldn't barely do any here.
Yeah, it'd just be like 1 point of damage. It's like, oh cool. Well, that was 8 mana I'm never going to see again.
Abilities. Life Bloom is a very strong casting ability, so whenever she casts a spell, she just heals everything on her side for 40 hit points, which is pretty solid. You always want to keep a hold of that. The uniqueness of the Fae is that she has a Mortis Engine effect, meaning that so long as she is in melee, she provides a sizable drain of health, along with -5 melee attack to everything in a 30-meter radius, which is where the Fae really shines, because Bretonnia struggle to deal with boxes sometimes, and the Fae is a Mortis Engine. So being able to throw a very area of effect orientated ability into a very tight formation can often be very effective. So if you're expecting a box, especially, I like to bring the Fae against Chaos in case of a Chaos box, because if you can throw the Fae into lines of Chaos Warriors, they won't be able to kill her quick enough for all the draining that she can do.
Yeah, and on top of that, if you really need it, you could just use like Beast Slayer's Best Stone to protect her if you really wanted to.
Because
already have really high melee defense.
Throwing her into any existing combat, she'll do quite a bit of work. You don't want to be throwing her into units on her own. You usually want to be throwing her into like an already existing engagement. So if say you've got some peasants fighting some Chaos Warriors, you want to throw her into that and deal some sizable damage to the Chaos Warriors. Also with the -5 melee attack, it means that they're going to be dealing a lot less damage while you're still draining them slower. So it works out pretty well there. Arcane Conduit. It's always nice to take some extra spells, especially when you've got Law of Life where you want to get as much healing out as you can. It's quite a good idea to take this, no matter the case. Favour of the Fae. Giving 40 melee attack to something is usually very good. Problem is that some things already have so much higher melee attack, like the units you want fighting, like the Companions of the Quenelles. Usually you want them fighting anti-large, or large even. So you've got 10, and then you've got 60 melee attack. At 60 melee attack, they're already going to be hitting most things. So applying an extra 40 doesn't have sizable effect, but it is still a very strong buff. If it was a bit cheaper, I'd say bring it all the time.
What about Grail and Grail Knights?
Grail Knights, yeah, that's another case of their melee attack, especially if you throw in the charge bonus as well.
Yeah, the charge bonus, but if they're already engaged in combat, you can pop it on weaker cavalry
units. Yeah. If you're planning on bringing weaker units, yeah.
Or like foot squires or something, or like I'd say you could use it for like frontline units that you think they're going to lose the battle or you want to win a battle.
Yeah, I'd say it's especially effective on frontline melee cav as opposed to shock cav, because shock cavalry, they're going to be doing 90% of their damage on the charge, and that will be how they're killing most things. But when you've got something like Grail Guardians, if you're bringing Grail Guardians, that can be a really sizable buff to put on Grail Guardians. You've got a very solid holding unit that can pretty much face anything and do very well in a long-term fight.
Their melee attack isn't that great, so pushing it up to like 76 is really
pretty
good.
Sizable, yeah. What other... onto the spells. Law of Life. This just goes for all Law of Life. This is the first time we're covering it, I think. Yeah, because we did Norseman Greenskins. Awakening of the Woods is it should be noted you can't overcast this, so this is only really good if you can see a tight... If you're planning to go up against quite lightly armoured factions like Norska or Greenskins, these can be quite good at clearing out tight formations. The speed reduce as well makes it quite good if you're planning on trying to catch a unit, like using it on a unit of skirmish cav and then chasing it with some cheap or just any cavalry for that matter means you're more likely to catch them, because it lasts how long does it? Didn't say how long the debuff lasts.
It's a 12-second duration, but it only lasts as long as you're in contact with the area of effect, because it seems like it does a kind of effect afterwards in the AoE.
It's a sort of puddle on the ground that leaves over.
Yeah. Pretty much, you could, if a unit's running away, put it in front of it.
And slow them down so you can catch them.
Yeah. Or if you don't want like archers running away from your knights, or you want to slow a enemy spear unit from blocking your knights.
Yeah, you can just get them out of the way fairly easily.
How fast does it take to cast it too? Because it's only a 1 second cast, and you can very easily...
It is a very quick cast. It's very similar to Brainbuster and the other spells of this sort of variation.
A 1 second cast time then. That's very good, because you can pop it on top of units trying to move into position and keep them from reaching where they want to go.
Onto Earthblood. This is a very good spell. I'd recommend taking it pretty much any time you bring a life caster, because ideally you want to be using it on a group of things. It should be noted that it has an AoE, not just a single thing. Often it can be worth casting it on a single unit depending on the unit, but ideally you want to group all your units up, cast a heal on them and get your maximum value out of it, because for 6 Winds of Magic you can get a lot of healing if you use that on your expensive cavalry or your Hippogriff Knights or just any of your heroes. You can just get quite a bit of healing off. So I'd recommend this for any time you bring a life caster. Flesh to Stone. If you're not expecting to go up against a lot of armor piercing, this can often cast by surprise. Casting this on a front line of peasant units can often make them hold a lot faster or even win some engagements that they shouldn't really do because of the extra armor. It's not the best. I wouldn't recommend taking it all the time, but against certain non-armor piercing things you can often rely on it to buff up previously unarmored units.
Don't really know why you'd waste it on... Don't know why you'd waste it on a peasant unit.
Well, it's fun fact. I'm pretty sure men-at-arms, assuming their leadership holds, if you cast Flesh to Stone on them, they should beat Marauder Berserkers.
But you're using it on one unit. It's not an AoE.
Yeah, that is the main downfall.
You'd probably be better off using it against on a cavalry unit against another cavalry unit that isn't AP.
Armor piece, yeah, that's also equally valid.
But I think it is a AoE if you upgrade it.
Yeah, if you overcast it, but overcasting...
no, if you overcast it, it's only an extended duration.
Is it?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you might be getting confused with Shield of Thorns.
No, Shield of Thorns is base AoE.
Yeah, Shield of Thorns is AoE, but it doesn't matter if you overcast Flesh to Stone, it's not.
Yeah.
Actually, I can open the spell browser right now.
Yeah, you can just right-click on the spells.
It's here. Yeah, extended effect duration. That's it. So not worth overcasting that. Actually, this is a much better screen to look through it all, isn't it? Shield of Thorns, a fairly decent AoE, but if you're planning on keeping a fairly... if you're keeping a big squad of cavalry in a sort of... squad to keep close together, then Shield of Thorns can often make you win the cavalry fight. because an extra 22% physical resistance and 30 base weapon damage, especially when on a non-armor piercing cav like Grail Knights. If you've got a squad of Grail Knights going around, that can be a huge buff to them.
Yeah, they're good to use. Good to use against Demigriffs or the Gold One cav the Dark Elves have, because they're AP. They can be useful on Knights of the Realm.
Yeah. It's preferable to use it on non-armor piercing because it's only base weapon damage increase. So if you use it on say Cresting Knights, you're only going to get a very small buff to your weapon damage compared to like Knights of the Realm, which will get their entire.
A whole 4 damage on my Questing Knights.
Ooh, I'm going to win this fight now. Where is it?
Click on the spells.
Green skin one. There it is.
Got a life.
Regrowth. Preferably used on single entities or things with just very few entities. If you do use it on a multiple entity unit, you ideally want to use it on a unit that has like most of its entities left. So say I have a unit of Hippogriff Knights left with like nearly none of their health but all of their models left. That is the ideal target because the healing is reduced based per...
But 5 of their models are still remaining.
Yeah, it's capped out on models remaining. So you'll get less healing if you use it on units with less models left. So ideally, the ideal target is single entities. So often you might bring a Damsel of Life, and then you can use this. You can use what's it called again? Regrowth on Albric or Rapunzel or any of your lords that can't really heal, unlike not Leon Kirk's regeneration. And it can be a very sizable heal. Not to mention the vigor increase. So ideally, you want to use it after they're already exhausted. Dwellers Below. Any of you have anything to say about this? Yeah.
Absolute rubbish.
Is it really shit?
I'll let you talk about it when I get more drink.
Yeah, so I've legitimately, I don't think I've ever seen a Bretonnia player ever use the Dwellers Below. Can you tell us a little more about it, Ted?
Just rubbish. It's just that's it. It's rubbish. For 17 Winds of Magic, you'd like a spell that does some damage. It says, oh, it's severe. It does nothing.
Severe damage to combat.
Does nothing.
It's like a snake oil salesman. Don't worry, this will totally cure your cancer, guys. Just drink this bottle, and then.
Yep.
All right.
It's rubbish.
I'm guessing you all
finished
shit talking it.
The fact that for a 17 magic spell, it has only a chance to resist damage, meaning all those models will have a chance of resisting it, and I'm assuming it has a 5-second wind-up too. Oh wait, no, it's direct damage, so it doesn't even have an AoE. So you just use it on one unit for 17 magic.
I believe it's a vortex spell, isn't it?
It's kind of like one of the kind of stationary vortex spells.
Yeah, it's like Pit of Shades, but it does nothing.
It doesn't do anything.
Yeah, like unlike Pit of Shades, which does damage, this one has a chance of doing damage. It's like worse than Bjorn's the Bjorn spell from the Deathcasters.
Well, even the damage it does is just rubbish.
Yeah,
I mean,
unless everything can stand in it for the big duration of its cast.
That's why it's like the worst.
Even if they do that, you can just safely ignore it because it's just not worth it. For 100 and
for 17
for 167. Well, 17 Winds of Magic at 167 gold.
Just not worth it. At all, especially when you can be using that mana on heals, which is just a much better place to implement.
Your Chevron and your Peasant Mob.
So typically the spells I might bring in an average situation would be, this is a pretty safe bet of spells to bring on any life caster, I think.
Yeah, you can bring Flesh to Stone or Shoulder Thorns depending on what.
Yeah, depending on the situation you can bring.
It depends
not this one, never this one.
Yeah, it depends what cav you can guess your opponent will bring. Depending what spell you take.
Apparently, it says that's one of the ways worth mentioning is it's one of the ways they deal with infantry
blobs. Yeah, that's the Fae herself does that fairly sizably well, but it's not as much of a deterrent to blobs as much as like being able to outlast them with healing would be. So this Awakening the Woods can also be good, but not against armor blobs.
If you're able to use Dwellers Below on more than one unit, that implies that your opponent like massively screwed up by lobbing all of his units into the same combat
and then proceeding to remain standing in the in the big debuff area.
Yeah, not only standing in the big debuff area and waiting probably 5 seconds for it to pop.
And then has to stand there for a full extra 15 seconds to get the full damage effect, which likely probably won't even kill the unit. Compared to like a Purple Sun or any other Vortex spell, if you deliberately walked into any other Vortex spell, you'd probably rout off the unit. But this one won't.
the Bjorn, the really expensive death spell that only affects one
Fate
unit.
of Una, yeah.
Yeah, Fate of Una is still a better spell than that spell, because any unit you use it on is effectively dead.
And if you want to do big area effect damage, then look no further than the phase items, the Chalice of Potions, which is basically a Comet of Casanova, which, for those of you who don't know, is a, if I open up this Law of Heaven spell, it's basically, I'm pretty sure it's exactly the same in almost every regard to the old...
I think so, yeah.
Where is it? Would that be under Heavens?
Yeah. It's under, like...
It's basically just a Comet of Casanova, so this can be good against those big armoured boxes that you're worried about as well, so I'd also bring this if you're expecting a box. It also does just very well against any infantry. If you've got, say, Peasant Mob fighting a really expensive unit, sacrifice the Peasant Mob, use that ability on it, boom, it's worth it. Peasant Mob trades with like Swordmasters of Hoeth. You trade those in, amazingly good value. On an item which is fairly expensive, 196 gold, but it'll nuke a good circle, so it does very well against elite infantry and heavily armoured infantry, which is something Bretonnia typically struggle with. Just make sure you try and get them in a situation where they can't dodge it, so when they're tied up with a peasant unit, or when they're in a box formation, it can be good to drop a Chalice of Potions on them.
Fucking does some pretty strong potions, just yeets from her horse and just explodes.
Just drops a tactical nuke on the location.
The Fey Enchantress is like a domestic terrorist.
What do you have to say about that, Ted?
Say about what, sorry?
Fey Enchantress is a domestic terrorist.
Impossible.
Like, makes goddamn bombs.
Explodes entire fields of elves. Anyway, onto the heroes now.
Yes.
Starting with a very solid unit, the Paladin. An amazing good bodyguard unit. Typically, you'll pair the Fey Enchantress with 2 Paladins on horses.
Oh yeah, if you're going meta, you want to be that
this
guy.
This is a known meta in the Bretonnian way of life. Typically, you drop these abilities off them. Yeah, you can usually keep the Guardian because that's an extra 15% physical resistance. The resistances that you can get 15 missile resist, 15 physical, 60 magical resistance. You can get quite a few resistances on the Fey if you pair her with 2 Paladins. Items wise, items aren't usually too helpful. They just act as a very good solid bodyguard unit. They're really good melee stat and they're anti-large, 20 bonus versus large. Really good armor, sizable health pool on horse. Just makes them a good guardian unit to stick with anything. Any caster you're worried about, and usually you stick them with a Fey, but you could even stick old Borderlow on a Pegasus with another one, along with the rest of your Pegasus squad. Could do a Fey because giving him an extra 15% physical resistance is pretty sizable.
And just swamping poor, because the thing is also that AoE affects all the units within the AoE as well. So if you have Hippogriff Knights with Alberich and a Paladin,
they'll all be affected.
All of the units get affected.
Alright, onto the damsels. Typically, if you're not using the Fey, this is how you get your...
Hang on a minute, you're forgetting one. If you so kindly switch to the Chevaliers, you'll find the Giga Chad himself.
I'm missing one. Henry Le Massif. So if for some reason you play sub-factions like a loser, then
an absolute
you can bring Henry Le Massif, who is counted as a large unit. He has armor piercing compared to the regular Paladin, but besides that, slight stat improvements.
It's like the meme. It's like, I'm in awe at the size of this lad.
You can also bring him on a Hippogriff.
You can bring him on a Hippogriff, so you could also pair that with, your other Hippogriff Lord options, of which you only have one, which is terrible.
Yeah. Like, if it was Alberich, then maybe, but...
Yes, if this was available in regular Bretonnia, I'd say it's worth covering, but because it's only available with Rapunzel, who does not synergize well with what Henry Le Massif is all about, except for the fact you could stick him on foot with Rapunzel and have sort of like a foot squad. Have a good old damsel of life with them as well. Especially considering the old Rapunzel's buffs that you can apply to him.
Well, I'm sorry, Willow. Some people like to have fun when they play games.
No, they don't.
So some people some people very well may like to play some.
I can't remember the last time I saw you take Henry Le Massif anyway.
I always take Henry Le Massif when I play Chevaliers.
Tox wants to remind you that you can only have one Guardian ability in an army.
Yes, in Bannerals, that is something to know. But although I don't think any newer players would know how to abuse that bug, even I don't know how to abuse that bug because it's banned. So what's the point in you knowing about it if it's bugged and I can't use it? So it's basically that.
Fix it anyways.
Yeah, well, give them like 10 months and I'm sure they'll fix it.
Yeah, probably.
But for those of you unaware, that there is some sort of bug that goes on with Guardian, whereas the fact that if you have 2 of them, you can stack them, or you can apply one at maximum distance or something. There's some bug. You're not allowed 2 Guardian abilities, but even then, you can just drop the Guardian off one, and that works.
And it works just fine.
Yeah, that's fine. Perfectly legal.
And he's cheaper too, because the Guardian ability is like what, 300 gold?
Yeah.
Or 2?
Now towards like 150. So that's definitely dropping the price down by quite a bit.
Okay, you can go into the Guardians then, the damsels.
Okay,
then.
there's nothing to cover. Damsels, they're casters.
For the spells, I guess.
Ideally, you want to bring. They do have the Power Stone. That's obviously always good to bring extra magic. Just superior in every way to the prophetesses. So don't bring those. Bring a basic lord, and then a damsel. Typically, you want life damsel. Maybe if you bring Leonka, you might bring one of the other 2. But typically, it's life. If you have Fade, you don't need a damsel because you have.
I mean, you still want life to appeal your if you're bringing a unit of elite cavalry knights or
yeah, you can
or
usually bring like 1 or 2. Maybe you could maybe bring 2.
We'll probably talk about all the magic in High Elf, so we could.
Yeah, we can do a magic video like 10 years in online.
Did you say 2 damsels?
Yeah.
You bring 2 damsels. What do I look like? I'm made or win some magic?
Do you think I'm made of money?
If I just drop everything except for Earthblood on this one.
Yeah, and also give them both Power Stones.
No, not meant.
Yeah.
And then you just bring like the Manticore Summon.
2 damsels and Enchantress, and just have.
Yeah. Oh, triple lady.
Triple life damsel.
Oh no.
The Fae plus her 2 backup singers.
Anyway, onto Felix. He's Felix. He's not. I feel like of all the rosters, he's the worst in this one. Like in Dwarves and in Empire, he has his uses, but in Bretonnia roster, being a foot hero, he doesn't see very much help. Not considering as well all the healing options that Bretonnia has in terms of Damsel Life and a Fey Enchantress, which you'll see nearly every game. It's just not very good.
He's not necessary.
He's just well, yeah, he's good, but he's just not necessary in the slightest.
I mean, helping hand's always nice, but
yeah, but that is it.
He's a bit pricey.
Yeah, unless you're bringing like another Footlord.
1,200 gold.
Like not very good.
For 1,200 gold, you could probably bring 2 paladins instead and have a better effect.
Most of the time, you're going to have like your lord on a mount of some kind, so he's just going to fly all the way far away. That Felix is going to be out of range to give him any buffs.
Yeah, like so the only reason you can have him is to run up in the front line and die.
Yeah, he's just not too helpful. Gotrek can be pretty helpful. I'd say this is the other meta would be if you don't like the mobile double paladin Fey, you can do a foot variant with just paladin on foot, Fey on foot, and Gotrek. That also works sizably well.
Gotrek's a very good bodyguard unit.
Yeah, very good bodyguard unit. Despite not having the bodyguard ability, he can just any large units that come over to kill. The ideal situation is anything large, Gotrek and the paladin kill, and then the infantry just gets worn down by the Fey's Mortis Engine effects and big old Chalice of Potions that nuke them. Especially with the minimum cast range being reduced, you can just throw them into something and then nuke the area with radiation constantly.
He does have 0 armor, so he can get worn down very quickly by cheap infantry.
But like, luckily you have the Fey there who can, if you pack Old Awakening in the Woods and Chalice of Potions and the Mortis Engine effect, you can just wear that down quite nicely. And
also heal Gotrek back up if it gets low.
Typically, you don't even need to bring any of Gotrek's abilities, to be honest. They make him somewhat more expensive if you bring all of them. It's none of them are really worth it, to be honest. He's just so good on his own. Because he still gets his chance to regenerate as a base ability.
So. 70 magic melee attack.
Which is pretty sizable. Especially when you throw in the anti-large of 35. So he's got 105 melee attack against large things. Yeah. Probably one of the highest baseline without buffs.
Anti-large bonus?
35, yeah, that's a huge... I don't think you can get melee attack that high like any other unit.
No,
without using like melee attacking buffs.
Yeah.
The Green Knight. Ted, do you want to say anything about the Green Knight?
The legend.
I mean, he's pretty cool. He's pretty nice against factions with not a lot of magic damage. Yeah, 55 physical resist is quite nice. Yep, he's got 16 melee attack, which goes up to 84 with the Dolores Blade, which is nice. Wouldn't bring him against factions like Wood Elves or Counts, because they normally get plenty of magic damage.
Yeah.
Well, and also anyone with Flaming Sword or Ruin can ruin his day.
Ruin her.
Oh yeah, watch out for Firecastles as well.
I told you.
Should be noted that he is, of course, a terror-causing unit, although he does tend to get bogged down a lot by those things that would typically be weak to terror, because he can only be put on a horse.
I guess you could use the damage resist buff on him too. To
make him more
Yeah,
stronger.
you can do that.
He also has Leon Kerr's regeneration while he's in a forest, which is nice.
Yeah.
He does have 75% physical resistance, just because.
Oh, sorry, I forgot.
You
Blessing the lady.
Separate blessing the lady with the basic physical resistance.
But I was thinking, like, if you are gonna run him into a magic unit, you might as well use Stone Skin on him because it'll give him something.
Some armor,
to survive.
some defensive. My main qualm with him is just that he's so expensive. 2,000 gold.
Expensive.
You could get 2 paladins on horses instead, which is just so much better.
Yeah.
In basically every way. All you're really losing out on is the terror. And you're basically getting a better thing that you can split up, you can move around, and is way more defensible.
I guess you could try and use him like an assassin, but...
yeah, you could do, but he so often gets bogged down so easily because he's only on a horse. He can get stopped.
He doesn't have have as mass as he used to, so he can't pull away from infantry anymore. Not as easily.
Chances are you're not going to see him, but...
But you should always... Just in case, you might see him. Typically, you want to bring magical damage against Bretonnia because of all the physical resistance they have, and also the Green Knight exists. So, there's that.
Green Knight does exist, but...
On a heavy forest map, I'd say there's a reason to bring him because of the regeneration extra means that you don't even need to bring healing with him. But he's just a bit too expensive for my taste, to be honest.
He's a fun unit, and you can bring him if you...
Fun's disgusting.
Oh, yeah. I forgot we're not allowed to have fun here, sorry.
Fun is illegal. On to fun, anyway. Peasant mobs.
Loads of fun with peasant
mobs. A Bretonnian player win with peasant mobs before, but maybe that's because
peasant mob are the meta front line at the moment.
Yeah, peasant mob do typically be the meta because they're zombies.
Historically,
they're zombies.
Yeah.
They're zombies in a faction that actually has like a reason to hold the line for a long period of time. Whereas counts don't have any range, they don't have any artillery, they don't have any sort of... But they have strong mobility core, which is the main reason why you bring zombies. But peasant mobs, even though they're not unbreakable, they all of a sudden have that role of defending ranged and missiles as well as normal zombies. And the fact that they run away and come back can actually be quite useful because often they'll run away and then come back and then they'll be able to protect the range for a bit longer.
And roll 100, so you get to spend way more than
only 100 gold, so you can spend your money so much better everywhere else as well.
Yeah, so you can have your front line, maybe 4 or 5 peasant mob, maybe another unit if you're fighting chaos, maybe some foot squires, and then just the rest for cavalry. Oh, and your archers as well.
And maybe trebuchets as well.
Yeah, the only, I guess, downside to the peasant mob is that if you actually do run into a front line that is designed like or just straight up shock cav that just decimate the front line and they disappear.
Yeah, typically you want to keep your knights near the front line for that reason. It's important not to go too wide with your cav, otherwise you must run the risk of your front line being crumped by big damage dealer infantry or shock cav or anything like that.
I've seen too many people try and like take a bunch of like weak frontline units and then they have their cav on the sides and it's like that's cool and just push all my cav to the center.
Through, to those run over ranged units.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna men at arms and spearmen at arms. These two. Have you two ever taken these? I mean, obviously the shielded variants are worth talking about, but do you ever take the
shieldless ones? I mean, you can take them maybe against rangeless factions, but other than that,
but even then, it's like the stat difference. 8 melee defense, in my mind, is really worth the 75.
It is a difference of 75 gold, but yeah, like for 4. You can bring 4 every time you bring 3 of the other unit. It's pretty much if you're planning on swamping them with numbers, but
yeah, if you're going up against a very low missile faction, peasant mob already works pretty well against that. It's even better. Even if they do bring missiles, peasant mob work well because they're absorbing the missiles. So
for all your important.
Whereas these are tight formation. They're really tight formation, so they can really take a lot of damage from missiles quickly. So they're quite vulnerable.
Usually you would just grab the shields because the shields are just so much more valuable.
Yeah, so we'll talk about the shield variants now because we skipped over those two because they're not worth talking about. Men at arms basic shields, surprisingly good. They can trade very well with infantry. They probably shouldn't will. They can beat. I believe they beat high elf spears, a unit like 175 gold greater.
I'm pretty sure they don't beat them, but they do trade well.
They trade well.
I don't think they do. They do trade well.
They trade well.
Yeah, same with bleak swords.
Oh yeah, I think was it Dread Spirits they beat? I seem to remember them beat, or maybe it was Eternal Guard. I think it might have been Eternal Guard.
You're probably Eternal Guard that you're thinking would win because
some
Eternal
elf.
Guard doesn't have the armor. Because these guys don't have the armor piercing to get through high elves and dark elf units, but against wood elves they can. But generally, the men-at-arms shields are fairly solid.
Fairly solid as a frontline option.
Yeah, they're as long as you can get something to keep that 50 leadership up, like a Paladin or a
maybe
Reliquary.
a Grey Relic, yeah.
Yeah, a Grey Relic. You can keep the morale up. You can keep them alive, keep them fighting. Or like the Fey Enchantress, keep her near the front line, and whatever they're fighting will die faster than will kill them. The only exception is when you're facing armies with really high damage, or like, as stated before, like Berserkers, Forsaken, other, like even Plague Monks too. Anything that does a lot of damage very quickly, they can wipe out the unit faster than they can hold.
Yeah, I mean, for a frontline unit that's 325, they are pretty decent.
Pretty decent for the trading value you get. Yep. Typically,
the
regular men-at-arms, they'll be
shield.
good at the trading, and then you've got the spearmen at arms for holding more often.
Yeah, I'd normally bring, in fact definitely bring a Grail against terror-causing factions like the vampires.
Regular men-at-arms are expendable while the spear variant isn't.
What?
No.
Yes, they're all expendable.
Oh,
spear are expendable.
Okay. Yeah, I see it. Oh, I'm dumb.
I'm probably just having something else by accident.
That was weird.
Yeah, so these pretty solid frontline units. If you're not using, you could go with a massive peasant mob along with like 1 or 2 or 3 of the men at arms, depending on what you want. If you want to be able to trade well against infantry, they shouldn't really trade so well against, like any elf infantry, pretty much. They'll trade so well against that you could often just go for a front line of these, skip the peasant mobs entirely. If you're worried more about holding for a long time, then I'd bring the spearmen arms. Yeah. Halberds, polearms. You typically don't want a front line of these.
Nah, definitely not a front line.
They are pretty solid for their damage.
Yeah, they're solid for the damage. So you might be tempted if you're going your heavy infantry. If you do have a Grail Relic, it's probably a good idea to have like one of them or one for each, like in the back line, guarding and stuff as well, because they fulfill the same roles as spearmen at arms, except from they're just better stat-wise overall, and they're armor piercing.
They are armor piercing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the polearms have a slower attack animation than the spears.
Yeah, that seems about right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know about 1 Grail for each, because it's a 40 meter. Oh no, it's 55 meters.
Yeah, it's quite.
The Icon of Devotion, so it's a fairly large
radius.
You don't really need 2.
12 leadership and immune to psychology, but we'll get to the relic week in a second.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're always going into that now. Yes. You got anything else to say, Psycho, about the old men-at-arms polearms?
Yeah, they give the good stab because they got armor piercing large and also.
How much anti-large is that? 18. I think so. Damn, they become a 40 melee attack, 40 melee defense unit for 450.
Yeah, it is. If they're stuck against anything large, they will decimate.
They're doing there compared to the spearmen. I believe the spearmen have much lower. Yeah, 15 bonus versus large compared to the 18.
Polearms are effectively the big scary unit that anyone with large don't want to fight. That is the Beast Slayers of Bastion.
Their only weakness being the fact that they are not immune to terror and they do have fairly low morale. So you can, if you've got something terror causing large, they can usually just run them in and scare them off.
They
want to pair them with a relic.
Yeah, they don't have shields, but they also have slightly higher morale
than
the regular guy.
But I think they would still get terror routed quite quickly without the support of a Grey Relic or any other nearby lords or heroes to buff their morale. Anyway, on to the fake man himself, the Grey Relic. Ted?
Yeah, pretty nice. You're not going to get any kills with it. You might get like.
Even though it has frenzy for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know why it's got frenzy, but it does.
Because the peasants, man,
are really angry.
Oh yeah, it's carried by battle pilgrims. So I don't know if that's why.
Yeah, it also has Blessing of the Lady, which I guess
that makes sense. It's a dead Grail Knight on a wooden horse, so you'd expect it to have.
Its stats are terrible. The only reason you bring it is for this, the Icon of Devotion, which gives 12 leadership and immune to psychology to everything in range, which when you've got a peasant front line that is both not immune to psychology and has low leadership, this can really change the whole perspective of your front line.
Also helps for spears or the polearms fighting a terror causing monster.
Yeah, especially
it certainly help to have that around.
Neutralises the weaknesses of the polearm and spirit variant when fighting large.
Exactly. And also, like, 12 leadership that turns the 50 boys into 62s.
Which makes them a fairly above average infantry unit.
Yes. It makes because a lot of their low cost comes from the fact that their morale
leadership
is so shit.
So terrible. Yeah.
Like goblin levels of shit.
So neutralizing that weakness can really turn a frontline fight around. Or just preventing any of those monsters that would typically go in and tear out from really doing anything. Not to mention it's fairly cheap, so if they target it very specifically, they're kind of wasting their energy, and it gives time for your cav to target whatever's targeting that.
Because for 500 gold, and if they're wasting, like, let's say, a cannon on it, it's like, that's
not worth
how many shots? Yeah, it's just not worth it, because the physical resist will lower the damage it takes.
It's a really small target, so it's very hard to hit.
400 damage will be taken down to, like, maybe 250.
Hmm.
And also the chance you're going to miss it, because it's not that big of a target, or a large of a target. But, question. Oh, okay.
Question.
He was asking, focus down the reliquary in order to break the front line and get the ranged units. Yeah, it's... You're better off just killing the front line at that point.
Typically, like the things you'd go after the Grail Relic with, cannons and the likes, you'd much be better off targeting it against a big expensive cavalry that's probably trying to flank you.
Yeah. Because it's only there to just make it so they don't run away, but it won't stop them from not dying. Because if you already have like a flaming skull, that'll kill the front line way more efficiently than killing a reliquary would.
It might be worth it if you've got like a terror causing unit that you would imply. If you're very intent on terrorizing the front line and you see that, maybe it'd be worth to send like maybe a flying character of some kind that you can send to quickly kill it. But you don't want to dedicate too many resources to it, because that's basically what it wants you to do.
It's just like, look at me, I'm a giant target. Please
Not to
don't
mention
shoot my cavalry.
It does affect itself with that buff, and it already has 85 leadership, so you're basically going to have to kill it. It's not going to run. It's going to be at 97 leadership.
600 health unit with
plus
20% physical resist.
Yeah, so it just makes it's just not going to run. Anyway, Battle Pilgrims. Quite a turn on the head compared to the rest of the peasant units. These are a sort of less holding, more damage dealing compared to if you compare to men at arms.
Yeah, high leadership,
better
high
leadership,
but less holding.
Less holding. They also have frenzy as well, which makes them immune to psychology so long as they're fairly healthy.
50% health.
Which means they can do fairly well against most things.
Yeah, they're a pretty decent front line if you want to take them as a front line. It just means that your front line is going to be more expensive, so you can take less elite cav. But
it's like if you're playing orcs and against undead, you would bring a front line of savage boys because they're all frenzy and also all immune to psychology.
Yeah, so the extra damage that gives as well.
Same goes with Bretonnia. If you want to really mess up a vampire player, you'd bring a front line of battle pilgrims because they're just they can't terror route them. And if you're a reliquary in there, it's like, well, even if they lose the frenzy, you still have the reliquary sitting there giving them more leadership, effectively pushing them to 92, where they're just not going to break.
They're just not going to go, typically against vampire counts, and I'd say maybe even vampire coast, maybe Tomb Kings as well, you'd probably bring a battle pilgrim front line, just because that immunity to, without having to throw in a Grail Relic, not only do they clear through chaff quite nicely, but they also have that immunity psychology, which can be quite good against those undead factions. Obviously, not only does that make you immune to terror routing, but that also makes you immune to the fear that all undead units cause, that typically lowers the normal morale of basic peasants and the likes. Foot Squires recently got buffed. Actually, it should be noted that Men at Arms, Polearms also recently got buffed, but they got a price decrease. Or did they get no, the Polearms got a price decrease, but the Foot Squires got a buff in stats, didn't they? I believe.
Yeah, I think they got a slight buff. Same with Foot Squires, they got a couple of things changed. They get their charge bonus decreased, and I think they get their melee attack or their weapon strength increased.
Yeah, something like that. So they are better than they used to be.
They did have a price increase. I think they used to be 625.
675, I think, and then they got buffed.
675.
Yeah, I think so.
Not too much.
Yeah, not too much, especially for the stat buff they got. I think they got extra like 3 melee defense, melee attack, and some extra weapon damage.
They're still not a fantastic unit though. You might bring them against the higher armor factions, but other than that, they're not really worth it.
Yeah, I'd say that against like Chaos, you might see a front line like this. You've got the peasant mob to take all the damage, and you got the Foot Squires to try and dish it out. You might also see this against dwarves, but if you're facing dwarves as Bretonnia, you're basically already lost. So Foot Squires can be good against you might be tempted to bring them against elven factions. The problem is most elf factions have pretty good missiles, and of course they have no shields and only 70 armor, so they get torn apart quite nicely. But They're definitely not much of an elite infantry, because that's basically the elite infantry that Bretonnia has.
Unless you chevron them up.
Which still makes them an amazing target.
We'll just need to wait for that.
Target, like up to let's say silver chevrons at the least.
Yeah, like triple gold, and then if we go to
triple gold,
silver.
and you barely get over 30.
Yeah, like Longbeards have way more melee defense than they do at triple gold chevrons.
Like foot squires are just not very good. You're better off just bringing men-at-arms who are better at holding, better at fighting, and yeah, they don't have armor piercing, but you got spells for that, or questing knights that could do that better.
Yeah, I'd say it's only worth bringing foot squires in those situations that you are worried about big armored halberd units, such as
we're just gonna have to wait to that and highly anticipated Bretonnian DLC.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, we'll get it any second now, I'm sure.
Yeah, along with the Chaos DLC, right, guys?
Yeah. Along with the Halfling DLC as well, because that's about they got the same likelihood. The Sony DLC does. RORs here.
Freezing over DLC.
This is our first ROR, isn't it? Yeah. Well, it's a very expensive ROR. You would have thought there'd been like an ROR Peasant.
It's a really good ROR actually. The whole one's a massive power, really nice.
I believe the only source of fire damage, except from the fire arrows. The only melee source of fire damage, I believe.
If I remember correctly, these guys get 30 extra units.
Yeah. Or do they? No. They basically switch out their shield for an extra sword, which causes them just to do way more melee attack. Not as much melee defense as you'd expect because they drop the shield. Extra weapon strength, and the main selling point is the fact they do magical and fiery damage. So mixing those in against undead again, this would probably be a pretty sizable front line because that fire damage. Good against all the regeneration that undead tend to pack. Magical damage in case they bring ghosty boys as well. Pretty good RR unit. Sad you can only bring one of them.
Yeah, they do have pretty nice weapon strength as well, but they will get shot, so don't bring them against
they don't have
any kind of missile factions.
So
pretty much
ideal against undead usually.
Yeah, undead are kind of the only faction you want to bring them against. Unless you want to have fun, you can bring them if you want to have fun.
Not here for fun.
Well, I know counts. I know you can bring it against counts because they have no missile to stop. But then there's the Beast Slayers of Baston.
Oh yes, the Beast Slayers of Baston. Basically, a much beefier halberd unit. Still not immune to psychology though, so still got that weakness.
But they have 80 leadership. Which is
so
really,
they probably won't get terror out as easily.
So it's very unlikely they'd get terror. But they are. If you're bringing Footlords and stuff, they're an excellent unit to kind of bring around with them, because any large unit that tries to run at them will have to deal with them. Could have a 50 melee defense.
They do have a fairly melee defense. One of the highest melee defense units in Bretonnian roster, I believe. Only beaten by Grail Guardians.
Yeah, it's got like 80, and also has one of the highest armors for infantry as well.
Unfortunately, they do make quite a good target for range, similar to regular foot squires.
Yes.
And I'd say just for the cost, 400 extra gold compared to men-at-arms polearms. And again, you're only really paying for the leadership there, which you could really just get in a Grey Relic instead. I don't know how good is their bonus versus large.
They didn't actually improve the weapon strength either. Like
it's the exact same weapon, I think. It's just because it's the same bonus versus large as well.
The bonus versus large is 22.
It's 18. The Beast Slayers.
Says it's
I'm looking at
the Beast Slayers. You're looking at men-at-arms.
Willow Dub.
Sorry. So they did get 4 extra. So they're slightly better at using their halberds than the men-at-arms are.
Yeah, I feel like if they had like an extra 5 or 10 weapon strength, then that might actually justify their cost.
Yeah, but
at their cost, they probably should be at least 100 or 200 gold.
I'd say some more armor as well, maybe. Make them more like heavily armored. Like some more proper like foot knights, you'd sort of thing, you'd say. They're not quite at that point yet. I think they're just a tad too expensive for anything that you'd actually be using in a Bretonnia army as well. They are very out of place in a Bretonnia army. Typically, you have your anti-large options, very mobile, and you're not really. You could defend the same. You can defend your missile unit with just basic spearmen anyway. So, not really worth the price in my opinion. Now onto Peasant Bowman, the most cost-efficient of the archer units in the game, I'd say.
They're really good.
You've got apple and you've got green apple flavors.
Oh, green apple flavor.
Yeah. Green apple is meta.
It is the
strawberry and green apple.
Ever since poisons no longer affect friendly units, the ideal strategy is to use pox arrows, and then you can charge your knight in without risking poison being applied to your knights. Obviously, Peasant Bowman are never going to win any fights. You want to keep them as far away from a fight as possible because they're just going to lose. They're terrible in melee. I mean, 10 melee attack, 14 melee defense, 36. Yeah, they're just going to die. A strong breeze will blow them over. It's worse than Peasant Mob.
Yeah.
They have worse stats than Peasant Mob. Well, Yeah, which has health.
Slightly less health, and while the Bismarck has more health.
Right, now that we've finished dunking on the melee stats of an archer unit.
Yeah, until now we finished that, we can go on to what they're really useful. Their volume of fire is really good. They reload very quickly. They fire a lot. Of course, none of the variants have armor piercing, but the
just regarding the poor accuracy thing, I've heard some people dispute how inaccurate they actually are. Apparently, it's not that bad.
They're not that inaccurate.
It's not that bad, especially if you're shooting at infantry units, and because infantry doesn't move fast enough. Because if you're shooting at cavalry, yeah, the accuracy is bad. But if you're shooting at
big, large as well.
Yeah, if you're shooting at large as well, who tend not to move very fast anyways, you can hit them pretty reliably. The other thing is that it's like the English longbow's response to the French is, if we shoot you with enough arrows, one of these arrows are going to hit you in the eye.
And chances are one will kill you.
Yeah.
Not to mention they have a very large range, like 160 is very large for an archer unit. So, quite considerable force of nature. The poison variant, of course, when you've got the applying poison in the back line, where your knights are probably, can be quite helpful in helping turn any fight. And the fire variant, you might take 1 or 2 if you're scared of any regeneration of any kind, or weakness of fire in forms of trees.
Or if you want to see pretty bright lights.
Or alternative use of the other variants. Say you don't really care what variant you want, you can break unit caps because you can bring different variants instead. And just bring as many peasant archers as you want, because they're counted under different unit caps.
Be goddamn cancer.
Still come under the range unit.
Yeah, but
umbrella.
Still be that many.
But peasant fire arrows do have 24 missile strength compared to the 20 of the other two.
I don't believe that's any extra armor piercing, is it? Let's see, 2.
No. It's the whole.
No, it's less. It's less armor piercing.
It says that. It says it's weak against armor.
Oh yeah, it's by one damage. It's not
Holy
much of a
shit.
difference. Yeah, these are already pretty rough against armor. I mean, just by sheer volume of fire, you're probably going to do a fairly okay amount of damage.
Yeah, the idea is that
just
you
be
would
big brain
delete
and don't shoot
whatever.
armor.
You would delete whatever infantry the enemy has, and then they're stuck with cavalry, and well, they can't beat Bretonnian cavalry.
Yeah. One last thing to note about Peasant Bowman is obviously because your front line is usually so chaffy, the enemy will usually bring a damage dealer front line, which usually lacks shields or armor. So another reason why Peasant Bowman can be very good in the right matchup. Now, onto the pride and glory of Bretonnia, Mounted Yeomen.
They're so fast, and they vanguard deploy. That'll show those Empire boys with their cannons.
No real helpfulness in Mounted Yeomen, but Ted will argue their case now.
If you want to catch skirmish cav, they could be nice. A lot of the Dark Elves, Norsca, Chaos,
their charge bonus
Beastmen.
actually isn't that bad. It's 32.
The big brain strat to beat Bretonnia is to kite them into oblivion. So don't necessarily need heavy cav in those matchups.
Which
so
matchups?
You can, it depends on your opponent. But I've played quite a few games,
I feel
especially against Alex, where it's been like four units of
Dark
Dark Riders with crossbows, these 2 Scourge Runners. Not really any missiles, basic front line, the rest of it's just kind of cavalry. So it's more of a case where it's skirmish cav are the main issue.
The main problem I see is the fact that most of the armor piercing, most of the skirmish cav that you typically bring against Bretonnia will be armor piercing because of how armored all the cav is.
Yeah, it's AP 360, so like in the case of Chaos Norsca.
So against the throwing axes.
It's
basically the only reason I can see for bringing them.
Oh wait, Alex is pointing
We're
out
not doing not everyone does banner rules. Get out.
The max for peasant archers is 6.
Is it 6?
Banner rules.
Oh.
Yes.
No, not banner
Apparently
rules.
it's 8.
Foiled again.
We've been foiled again, Willow.
Oh no.
But I feel like a good rule of thumb for any new player looking at Bretonnia: treat mounted yeomen like you would with wolves or hounds. They're a fast unit that can catch skirmishers, and unless it's like Marauder Horsemasters from Chaos, they're going to win most of the time. And their charge bonus isn't that bad. They're kind of like Dark Riders in that sense, that they have a good charge bonus for what their actual cost. So you can actually cycle charge very easily with them into archers and stuff like that. They'll win against most archer units as well.
I know, but they'll route so easily. It's like the horse will see a mouse in the field, and that'll be
the
enough.
problem I see in them is if they don't have those targets like skirmish cav, then they just don't do anything.
Yeah, they don't do anything unless you're coupling them.
They're very matchup specific.
Yeah, which when you can bring like peasant archers instead to counter skirmish, or you can just bring knights errant to chase them off as the same efficiency, because at least you can use those knights errant later on. If they don't bring skirmish cav, you can still really use the knights errant. You can't really use most.
You never catching them though. Knights errant only have a bronze shield.
Most of the time you're not aiming to do that.
The variant of the yeomen, the mounted archers, would actually be a good replacement if you weren't planning them. Yeah, they can be useful to pick away at units that, or other like cavalry, because since they're so fast, no heavy cavalry is ever going to catch them, and especially if you've got the Regiment Renown, which is poison, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
You could just sit there, poison them while your other cavalry assists them, and just run into whoever they're chasing.
We'll talk about that after we've gone through the rest of the cav, though. First.
Yeah, go on.
So knights errant, the cheapest base sort of cav of the old Bretonnia roster. They are a shot cav. And they are labelled as anti-infantry. Basically, they're just sort of your, I say, chaff cav. They're the cav you're not intending to do very much with. They can do very well against archers and the likes.
But
or cycle charging into the back line. They do have a very sizable charge bonus, so getting cycle charging in with them is a pretty good idea to do.
They have anti-infantry, but they don't actually have the.
They don't actually have anti-infantry
bonus. So none of them do.
They can really be used against anything. The main reason they're anti-infantry is because you can cycle charge a lot easier into infantry, because they won't just turn around and chase you. Or if they do, it's not going to work very well. So they can, along with 80 armor as well, makes them just very good at harassing in the back line, getting after archers, getting into the back line of the front line engagements. So if they fail to put any sort of like counter mass in the middle, you can just rush them down into the middle. So say you've got like a berserker front line against you, you can just rush those in to deal some extra damage early on without having to risk anything.
Won't do much for it enough.
No, it won't do much, but it's damage is damage. The armor are basically the same, just a stat buff, because it's basically a frenzy as well, which basically just increases their stats.
And a silver shield.
Oh, and a silver shield, yes, which makes them better at chasing off skirmish cav, of course.
Still not going to catch them.
No, but you don't really need to most of the time, unless it's throwing axes. You don't really need to, because most of the armor piercing skirmish cav is single fire.
I feel like we should talk about the wedge ability for a second, because that is kind of important for Bretonnia.
Yes, I suppose so. Somebody else talk about it, because I never use it.
Yes. Okay, so the point of the wedge formation is it increases the actual charge bonus you have, so 36% of 54 is probably like 15 or 20 or something. Probably 15. So that would be put on top of it, so you'd have a larger charge bonus. But the acceleration deceleration, meaning that you can strike the unit and it allows you to turn around and run away very quickly. Much more quickly than you would if you were just using a straight line, because your acceleration is so much higher. If that makes sense. So, and you have faster charge speed, so yeah. It's generally you get more charge bonus, more bang for your buck, but it also allows you to move away from the person you just hit more quickly than you would normally.
Okay, then the wedge abilities been covered. Frenzy, just basically RRR is just staff. It's kind of one of the most boring RRR units, because it's just more stats, basically.
It's a better version for 150 gold, which is actually pretty good, because like chevroning Knights of the Realm is way more expensive.
Yeah, because of how
there's no reason not to really bring it, because it's actually pretty good with the 55%.
Yeah, with all the melee attack they have, it makes them basically almost the exact same as Knights of the Realm, so for less cost.
Yeah, they're pretty good, pretty good unit, and they also look really cool.
They look
so
really cool.
They get points for coolness.
They get Ted seal of approval. They look good. Good. Now onto Knights of the Realm.
For the solid actual
this is
cavalry.
The solid cav that you could probably just bring 5 units of these and you'd be good against. This is the basic Bretonnian army here. It's just 5 units of Knights of the Realm. Their sizable charge bonus. Despite being anti-large with that much charge bonus, they'll shatter infantry as well. Yeah, as long as they get the cycle charges into them. And
the larger the charge bonus, the more powerful wedge becomes as well.
Yes.
Like with the Knights Errant, you might not even bother with wedge, because it's such a small bonus.
Yeah, because 68 extra melee attack, you're already pretty much guaranteed to hit.
I do think with the wedge formation though, they suffer the attacked at flanks leadership debuff.
Yes, but the idea is that you would hit them immediately. It's more micro intensive. That's the thing with wedge lance, is that you would hit the target and then run away instantly. It'll punish players who aren't microing their cavalry, but it will reward players who are fast with microing their cavalry. Max
Yeah, I mean the
talks at the
Yes,
banner
I
rules
just
again.
got the banner rule book.
Cavalry units.
I think he's got the PDF out in front of him.
Yeah, probably. Well, you gotta have to
Yeah.
release them sometimes when you got a matchup up. You never know when you're gonna break banner rules. Bring an extra
Yes,
unit
he
of skirmish
does. He does
cav.
have it open.
Yeah, so Knights of the Realm, a very solid unit. The bonus versus large just makes them so much better against fighting both large with the 10 extra melee attack against them and everything. But mostly they're a shock cav. You're gonna just be cycling them in and out of things.
But also, I guess we should probably point it. This is also why you never bring anything large against Bretonnia a lot of the time, because
Especially
all
not
their
unarmored
cavalry
large.
Yeah, especially unarmored large. Like, don't bring savage boar boys because they're gonna lose in every fight.
Just bringing unarmored is just really usually just unarmored anything against Bretonnia is usually a bad idea. It's why Bretonnia struggles against armored factions like dwarves so much, because they have all the tools to just shatter unarmored infantry. You murder them with Knights of the Realm, and
Yeah, I mean
you
the only
trained amazingly well with them.
the only AP cav Bretonnia has are Question Knights, the ROR Question Knights, and the Hippogriff Knights,
Yeah,
and that's it.
only options really for RR. When that's it. When you have such a roster like that, it's not very
And
much.
Gotrek and Felix.
No, and then foot squares.
Oh, Foot Squires. And,
And men-at-arm polearms. Okay, there's a
and
few,
Pol-
but none of them are good.
Yeah.
Apart
No,
from
they're
Peasant
not
Knights.
fantastic. They won't win.
Questing Knights is your best
Best
guess,
armor
option
piercing
for armor
choice.
piercing,
Yeah.
with the exception of like Demogriffs.
But it's always a bad idea to
not
put
fucking
all your
Hippogriffs,
armor
sorry.
piercing in the form of just cav, because it can be countered so easily
But
with any
the-
anti-large.
Well, the other
cannons.
thing on top, the other thing with Questing Knights is that they don't have shields, unlike every other knight unit which has shields.
I
These
suppose
guys
we
can
should
get
go on to
shot.
talk about Questing Knights now, I suppose, yeah. Onto Questing Knights.
Yeah, because Knights of the Realm are pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Just
They're cav. They go gallop, stab.
Now, Questing Knights are not a shot cav, but they do still have 41 charge bonus, so I'd say it's still most of the time worth the cycle charge in, unless you're fighting like anything fast. In that case, it's not a good idea to try and awkward that engagement out.
Yeah, the big thing is that they're AP and they
Immune to
have
psychology.
immunity to psychology.
Yep.
So against, I think they're really good against Tomb Kings.
Yeah.
Armored
It's
constructs.
basically needed against Tomb Kings, needed against Lizardmen, needed against anything that has the option of bringing big armored monsters,
Also,
because that is the
Chaos
weakness
is
of...
also a good
Yeah,
choice.
Chaos
for
as well,
Questing
yeah.
Knights.
Just anything that you're worried about big armored large, even against Empire as well, because of Empire, Cav, Demigriff Knights, you want Questing Knights.
Yeah.
Pretty sure you can just bring Grill Knights and have the Shield of Thorns. That would help.
Does that work as well?
Yeah, that works pretty well.
But I guess that is kind of expensive in comparison, where like for every 2 Grail Knights you could have 3 Questing Knights.
Yeah. So is that as
No, you
well.
couldn't.
No. How much is that? 1, 2, 3.
Uh,
Yeah, no,
it's
it's about, it's 300 less.
3,300. Where are you getting the 300 from, Cycle?
God.
I'm taking off
Math.
the fucking damsel, who I don't
Are
need
you
to
you
vote for.
printing
I
your own
don't-
puns now? Are you counterfeiting?
The
No,
frank
I
is
just dropped.
dropping.
I dropped the
Yeah.
Shield
Talks,
of
correct me if I'm
Thorns,
wrong.
because-
That might be against banner rules.
You can't just materialize 300 gold.
No, I just took off Shield of Thorns because it's a stupid spell. I don't need it. I have Questing Knights.
The lady.
The lady will give me the.
But yeah, 400 difference. We'll go into Grand Knights later, but a 400 gold difference, you might not be having enough money to afford it sometimes. So Questing Knights.
The reason you would use the Grail Knights is, I guess, the physical resist, because they already have a physical resist. So.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll get into that later. Knights of the Lionheart.
Knights of the Realm, ROR. Very
Yeah.
nice. They've got
Magic.
they can cause fear. They've got encourage, which
Yeah,
is
they're
nice.
very similar to Grail
Magic
Knights
damage.
for cheaper.
Oh, they're not similar to Grail Knights. Holy Christ, their stats are nowhere near as good as Grail Knights. But
And also, they
other
don't
than
have
that,
the 20% physical resist.
What are you saying, Ted? Ted?
He said other than that, and then cut out.
But the stats seem they're better. Their stats are better than Grail Knights. 10 less charge bonus. Of course, you're missing out on the physical resistance and the like, but those are more under abilities and the perfect vigor. We'll wait for Ted's internet to reconnect so we can.
To reconnect. But yeah, but also they do have the immunity psychology and like. what you
Yeah, the
stated
buffs. Yeah,
before,
but
they have the
stat-wise, they
encourage.
are just ever so. No,
They're-
pretty much
they're a
equivalent
cheap-
to Grail Knights.
Like, if you want a Grail Knight on the cheap, bring those boys.
Yeah. Because they're much cheaper. 300 gold, stat-wise, especially, taking
Yeah.
that into consideration, they're basically the
They're-
same. What's the
They're about
anti-large
the
like?
same stat-wise. The only major difference is that Grail Knights have the 20% physical resist, while the Regiment Renown does not.
No, but they still they do cause fear though, which Grail Knights don't. So there is that small bonus,
Yeah,
which isn't very much, but
yeah. But actually, fear is really big for a cavalry unit because the shock damage they can do there's good chances that you could like insta route targets. Like whenever I use Chaos Knights with lances, a single good charge against some of the weaker infantry units, like if they only have a less than 60 morale, they break. They'll break because of the -10 plus the damage from the shock and plus getting hit like from the rear or the side.
That also, I believe, makes this the only other unit besides what the Hippogriffs and the Green Knight cause fear.
Yep.
Nothing else in the Bretonnia roster does.
It will trumped by a lot of other cav.
Yeah, but
they do miss out on the physical resistance and the perfect vigor, but stat-wise, they are just cheaper of Grail Knights.
And also they have fear, which
can make some better, and the encourage as well. So if you have a big blob of cavalry moving around, some extra leadership can help you win some fights. Anyway, on to the boys themselves, the Grail Knights.
Have we covered Ted's pro-Bretonnian strategies yet?
No, we haven't. We'll cover that next week. But now we're just going through the entire roster.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Max 3 Grail Knights.
I'm sure
talks for reminding us.
Grail Knights. Ted can't argue his points, and that's quite nice, isn't it? Grail Knights. Perfect vigor. Perfect vigor is very good because
very
being able to run the entire battle at peak combat efficiency is very powerful. Immune to psychology, of course, not being able to get terror routed against all those nasty monsters that they want to be fighting because they're anti-large. They also have a huge charge bonus, so it basically just means they destroy everything. Lady, the 20% physical resistance as well makes them win against so many different calves that they shouldn't win against that have the armor piercing because they can't pass by it. Because not many units have magical damage and armor piercing, so they can't negate both sort of resistances.
And also take into account the fact that they add the shields with the physical resist, and they become really hard to shoot to pieces.
Yeah, surprisingly difficult to shoot.
So because they're just hard to take down.
So they are the strong elite cav of the Bretonnia roster. They are what you want, cycle charging through. They'll run through things to just decimate them very nicely.
Yeah, you have to put a lot of funds into bringing these things down usually.
Which what makes this next unit so strange. Grail Guardians. Oh.
They have even more armor.
They have a lot of armor, but it's not. Bretonnia's so focused on the shock cavalry.
They've got chosen levels of armor.
They drop 40 charge bonus. Which is
it's because they don't have lances. They're a melee cavalry.
Yeah, they're a melee cavalry. Which
the purpose is that they can get into close combat, keep in combat, and keep fighting and stay and hold. Like if you're dealing with if you want a unit that can hold up any anti-large armor-piercing unit that could affect your actual knights, you throw that in, and they could probably fight 2 units of Demogryphs and stay alive for
long
a very
enough, but
long time.
You're throwing away like 1,600 gold, and you're not probably getting much damage output.
True, but like I've had scenarios with like basic Chaos Knights able to hold like 2 units of Demogryphs for at least 2 minutes straight, and after that period of time, my other unit of Chaos Knights was able to just cycle charge everything into the ground.
Yeah.
Do you know what beats Demogryph Knights though?
That is Demogryph Knights, but
Knight of the Realm questing Knights.
Gang, just a spam of them.
Yes.
Just an overwhelming
that's generally the I think the problem with Grail Knights is that Grail Guardians is that for 1,600 gold they're not that much better than questing Knights.
Compared to like Grail Knights, it's like
if they had armor piercing, then sure, or maybe even anti-infantry or something.
Yeah.
Like anything else would be nice because they don't have anything to add on top of what they have.
Yeah, I think they're just 100 gold more expensive than Grail Knights and also worse at the same time.
I think if they were 100 gold less than Grail Knights, they might be a bit better.
Yeah, that might make sense.
This doesn't make too much sense for me. Especially because it's a holding unit, but they're very mobile, so it doesn't work out too well.
The funny thing is that for Chaos, it's the reverse, where the lances cost more while the regular knights cost less. I don't know why they didn't follow that rule.
When the lances don't have armor piercing, we don't have anti-large in the Chaos roster. Whereas they do here.
Yeah. I don't know, because Chaos ain't used to... I don't know. How does that even work? How do they not know how to stab a big thing?
I guess it's just the 30 extra armor that's where all the money going. Which is a lot of armor, to be fair, but... Like, you're going to so often see armor-piercing anti-large against Bretonnia that
but what's the difference? So Grail Knights armor can resist between 45 and 90% damage.
Once you get into 100 to 120, you start getting to 70%.
Yeah,
isn't it between... So 120, isn't that between 6... So die rolls between 60 and 100?
Yeah, it's between 60 and, like,
because it caps at 100, because you never heal from damage.
Yeah, but it's, I think once you get into 100, that's around 60 to like 80% chance of blocking the damage.
So a really high armor, but when you're facing so much armor piercing anti-large, which you will probably be as Bretonnia, it really starts to wear their usefulness down. Like in most other rosters, you'd probably see them. Like in the Empire roster, if you replaced like the Reichsguard with Grail Guardians, it'd be really good. But you just don't. You're just so focused on dealing with that big armored cav against Bretonnia that they're such a good target for him. Finally, the Companions of Quinels, which are compared to the Grail Guardians, are just better in every way.
Superior. I'm pretty sure they're still the best
they should be
unit
what
in the game.
Grail Guardian should be.
They beat so Companions of Quinels beat every other cav unit in the game 1v1. I'm pretty sure.
In a straight fight, they've got
apart from maybe Chill Guides, I think they might lose the Chill Guides.
Yeah, they have that 20%.
Of course, they have the 20%.
Ted's trying to connect back to the conversation. Still dying.
Oh,
still dying, Ted.
This is tragic.
This is Bretonnian peasant internet connection at play.
For those of you watching the video back, this isn't your internet connection. It is. Your video isn't buffering. This is just Ted's
more wood into
normal
your
sound.
wood burning furnace to run your computer.
Yes, more wood for the fire.
The router's not working, sire.
Speaking of fire, these have 25% fire resistance, so they can be good against dragons, dragon slayers, dragon princes as well. Yes, specifically the fireborn because they cause.
Certainly the fireborn.
It should also be noted that this means that Flaming Sword of Ruin doesn't give you as much of a buff against them because it gets rid of the 25% physical resistance, adds 20% physical resistance, but then adds 25% fire resistance.
The best way to look at it is that that resistance actually nullifies the bonus that Flaming Sword of Ruin would give you since it goes.
Yeah, don't you do less damage?
Yeah, you actually do slightly less damage.
Yeah, you do less damage.
You do because it's 25% to both armor piercing and base.
Yeah, but because is it not?
It's 20% physical resistance and then 25% fire resistance.
Because it's magic, so it bypasses the physical and
then gets hit by the fire.
Yeah.
So you trade 20% resistance to 25, so you do less damage.
But although you do, I suppose, when you're casting a fire caster, you get your.
Well, I'd say you're still doing probably the same amount of damage because you're nullifying your own bonus damage, but bypassing the physical. So you just, I guess.
It just makes it a lot worse, basically. It makes
let me pull out a calculator. Let me pull out a calculator.
It's not worth it. Let's just say it's not worth it.
Yeah, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. It makes Flaming Sword of Ruin
usually not worth it. You'd be better off just using Cascading Cloak of Flames on a unit fighting the Companions of Quinels.
Now, Mounted German Archers, what a leap down from Grail Knights and Questing Knights and Companions of Quinels down to Mounted German Archers.
Man, Ted loves Mounted German.
Yeah, he really does. I don't like them though. They do not have the volume of fire compared to regular archers.
I don't know what it is. Every single game we play Dark Elves versus Bretonnia, he brings Mounted Yeoman and he loses them every game.
Yeah, I don't see they're used like they won't trade that way.
Well, actually, they're fine against like other skirmish. Like they have pretty good range, like 125 range for a skirmisher unit that can shoot in all directions as well.
Yeah, but
like like their missile damage is, it's fine.
It's not great.
But
because of their morale, I don't see them being able to outtrade.
It's the same damage as archers, but just less models.
Fewer models.
Yeah, generally the best case scenario, if you're wanting to bring any skirmish cav, is you bring the Regiment Renown and keep it with your heavy cav, so they can poison whatever the heavy cav fights.
It's running, if you're facing on a large map and you're planning to do some big fighting gamage, moving on to the ROR with these, just being able to, because obviously you're not always going to be nearby your poison arrows to help with that bonus. So the Wardens of Montfort can do that.
The problem with the Yeoman is they're great and everything. Like they're fine. They're just okay for the cost of 500 gold. They're okay. They're fine. They can work. But the problem is you already have enough cav to micro. Don't give yourself more work.
And you already have enough archers to shoot things down. As long as you're keeping your cav near your archers, basically, there's no point in them.
Just in general, they don't do enough damage though.
Yeah.
The reason peasant archers work is that you can field so many of them.
It's 120 shots or something. 68, yeah.
Basically, but so generally peasant bowmen you bring let's be honest, the meta is you bring 6 peasant bowmen.
Yeah, you bring a ton of peasant bowmen.
Yeah.
And then so they just focus fire, and the reason they're so well protected is you just have a chaff that just takes so long to get through, and it's getting cav charged. Whereas horse archers, you get less for more gold spent, so they just don't do the damage you need.
And you're just getting mobility.
Yeah.
Which ideally, when you're playing Bretonnia, you have all your cavalry. You should be winning the mobility fight, so you shouldn't really need to worry about your peasant archers getting flanked into.
Yeah, and anyways, in most cases, you'd bring like yeomen just to chase down other skirmishers. You wouldn't want to duel with your own skirmishers because you could just get basic mounted yeomen, like just regular mounted yeomen will work fine to drive off other skirmishers, and then you can worry about the rest of the battle. But the wardens of Montfort you can bring them. Yeah. You can bring them with your cavalry because the pox arrows can't follow your cav where they go, but they can shoot and poison them since you can't poison your own units. You can just poison whatever like the questing knights are fighting, and since they're faster than any actual melee cav that the enemy could bring, unless they're like Chaos or Norska and have hounds to chase you with, they're pretty good to support them, and they're still pretty cost effective. 750 for poison damage and
extra. Yeah, thanks to the extra missile strength, I feel like they actually do just about the same amount as regular Peasant Bowman would do in terms of damage.
Yeah, but
regular mounted yeoman though. One down.
Yeah, the mounted.
400
in cavalry, right?
Oh, the regular one.
Yeah, regular mounted.
So if you know, see, as much as these fill the role of like cav, like you might compare them to like Dark Riders or Illyrian Reavers. They're they're just a lot worse. Honestly, I don't think it's actually worth tracing stuff like that off as Bretonnia. Willow might agree with me.
I don't like using many.
I generally feel like it's so much better just to retreat behind your missile line and just, if they're gonna try and skirmish you, your Peasant Bowman will beat skirmish archers easy. So just retreat behind the line and it just shoot them.
Or you could just throw knights errant at them and just forget about it.
Yeah, or some knights of the realm. If a skirmish unit is only one directional firing, you can usually just throw a unit of knights of the realm in it and chase it off.
And then chase it forever.
Eventually, you'll catch it or something.
It'll either get cornered or it will just never fire, and there goes all of its value.
Yeah.
And you get, and for the cost of 2 out of your 5 knights, you can now do whatever you want.
The worst thing is as well is with Mounted German, I believe they lose to Marauder Horsemen.
Wait 1 second. How well would the ROR missile cav trade in melee if caught by hounds?
Oh, I don't think very well.
What are their stats anyway?
Not well. It's worse than regular Mounted. Oh no, it's slightly better than. No, it's worse. It's worse than regular yeomen, and I think regular yeomen would lose to hounds. So.
Very slightly though, by like 2. Like 2 and 4, which is
4 and 4.
Bad though.
It's
they have
bad,
5 more leadership, but they'll still lose to hounds.
Like
and other
they'd probably still, but they'd hold out a little longer.
A little bit longer.
But if they're but
actually, with 92 speed, you might be able to outrun most hounds.
Yeah, they can outrun hounds.
Well, 95 is usually for most hounds. So
yeah,
but
the thing is that what I'm saying is that you would bring them with your actual cavalry force. So if any hounds got to them, you could just turn a unit of Knights of the Realm and just attack the hounds, and the hounds die.
So you usually stick them with your cavalry.
The important thing is that they can hold. They can hold long enough against the hounds to survive.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Enough talking about a unit that's barely ever brought in the Bretonnia roster. Anyway, before we move on to Pegasus now. Oh yeah, the other units that are barely ever.
Oh, the other.
Never brought. Yeah, never brought.
I feel like we can group all these 3 just together, in terms of it's.
I feel group the Pegasus together, but the
Hippogriffs. Yeah, okay, we'll group the Pegasus. Yeah, the Pegasus. Basically, these are just a way more expensive but better version.
Yeah.
Hippogriffs basically not that great unless you're doing quick battles and you bring an entire army of them. Catch someone off guard.
Yeah, really throw someone off, really, because or if you're going against like something you might be expecting a flying lord, you can go for like some sort of mega goon squad and just destroy them.
Bring Eric with some hippogriffs and then use his buffs.
Yeah, and just have a squad
still do the missile resistant on AoE?
I think.
Not out there.
No, Lewin Shield doesn't AoE.
Oh, it's head back to Land of Living.
The Peasant's managed reconnected router.
Nice, good job. Got the wood burning. Yeah, so Pegasus Knights, and I don't use them. So
I don't rate
Ted, tell us why you use these. Why do you use these?
I don't really use the Pegasus Knights.
Yeah,
any of these 3, any of these 3, just any of them. Why do you use them?
I've used Hippogriff Knights because they're armor piercing and fairly decent stats.
But the
and also,
we'll go.
Huh? Oh. I guess Ted is
Well,
cut
Ted
out.
was about to argue the case for Hippogriff Knights, but
I was going to point out that Hippogriffs are also 1,000 health per model, meaning that they're very nice for healing.
Yeah, they're very good targets for
healing. If
healing.
you got a life caster, got Alberic with 2 Hippogriffs, you can pretty much swamp any air unit and win that fight outright. But it's not so good if you're against anything that can shoot at them. Yeah. Because, even with their armor, they're still those single models.
They can also get tied out quite quickly.
Yeah, they can get...
I think they have terror. Oh yeah, they do have terror.
Yeah, they have terror, which is quite helpful because there's not many of that.
I'm pretty sure the only faction that I legitimately would ever bring them against is like Beastmen, maybe.
I might be tempted to bring them against vampire counts if I want to go out a lord or something.
Vampire counts, because you can just wreck a terror geist with 2 units of that plus Alberic's bonuses against large. Because
do you really have a problem with that though? Do you know that rather than bringing just like real nice?
Yeah, and you could just go full foot and just wait for them to land. Yeah, that also works. Of course, then you leave yourself open to all the breath attacks and stuff. But
well, the thing is also like if the Terrorgeist, because here's the thing: if they've got like Terrorgeist or Struggle Lord on Terrorgeist, the option they have is land near your archers or die. There's the ultimatum. Land close enough so you can shoot them, or die from Alberic's going, oh.
Yeah, another thing to note about these 3 is because they're very overpriced just because they can fly pretty much. Like if you compare them to like any other cav, they are just worse, but because they can fly, they're given a lot more
I mean, the Pegasus Knights and the Hippogriff Knights have both got the 20% physical resist, but the Pegasus Knights, the royal ones anyway, have got immunity to psychology
and
perfect vigor. They are living saints, which is nice.
The other 2 are basically or the Hippogriff Knights are immune to psychology as well because they have terror.
The only really upside to them is that like, if you compare Royal Pegasus Knights to Grail Knights, I'd take Grail Knights any day of the week over Royal Pegasus Knights.
I'd probably take Grail Knights as well, but the mobility's nice. The 105 speed's nice.
Yeah, being able to fly is basically what their money comes from.
I'd bring the Hippogriffs for the mobile armor piercing against, especially if you're like, let's say if you're against Tomb Kings or something, you could just decimate any large monster they have. If they decide to throw it towards your archers, you can use it as like a reaction.
Yeah,
I have a replay of me and Ted playing a game, and he brought a flying gun squad, and he chased Marathi around the sky for the entire game.
Doesn't Marathi move at like 110?
That sounds like something
probably wouldn't be able to outrun him.
Like, you're not going to catch her unless you got slows.
Yeah, but it was funny though. It's funny to watch.
Anyway, onto the underused flying squads.
They were simping for her.
Onto field trebuchets.
Actually, I
best artillery in the game. Did you know?
Fairly decent for considering it's Bretonnia. We wouldn't think to have good artillery. They're fairly decent for their price.
I mean, they're alright, but their accuracy is shocking.
Yeah, it is shocking, but they're not made for accuracy. They're made for breaking up those the thing that Bretonnia usually struggles with, which is like halberd units, armored.
Normally, you have to bring
armored boxes.
You have to bring 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah, and also the magical field trebuchet doesn't hit your allies; it just phases through them.
No, it doesn't. It just doesn't do any friendly fire, and it also has more.
Well, that's correct. It does hit your units. So I've told you this like.
Yeah, it's the explosion.
The projectile still does friendly fire, but the magical explosion.
I was just imagining it just bounces off the back like fucking styrofoam. They just threw a styrofoam block, then it lands in front of him and crushes some dude. It's like, no.
But that's the big misconception about Blessed Field Trebuchets. So if the projectile hits
friendly fire, it's a lie.
Definitely still hit you. It's just the magical explosion doesn't kill your units.
Yes. It's not no friendly fire, it's half no friendly fire, sort of.
Yeah. Just try not to have it hit on top of your unit.
They just say no friendly fire to make the peasants feel better in the front line.
Don't worry, it's no friendly fire.
Don't worry, it's blessed by the lady. You will
just
not be
charge
hurt.
in and hold them still for us,
yeah,
okay?
just stand still, stand right there. Yeah, I don't think it's worth the extra 200 gold compared to regular field trebuchets. But I mean, if you're worried about physical resistance, you could be argued to bring one of them.
Yeah, or worried against ghosts. Like if you're against counts or coast or something where they got sirens or something like that, you could just use it against them.
All right, I believe that is the Bretonnia roster finished.
Yes, it is.
Now we get to go on to Alexis's subject. High elves.
The very high elves. With every
caster in the game. So it's getting late now. Yeah, with every lord. I feel like this is the most lord options in the game.
Yeah, because they have every lore of magic.
I feel like this
leader.
is the most. I mean, what else would there be? Vampire counts? Nope, nowhere near. Empire, maybe.
No, definitely not Empire.
Yeah, just that they have the most lords in the game. Yeah. So
Because they.
we
Well,
can go. I don't know the High Elf Lord roster, so you're gonna have to take over most of this, Alexis. I'll stream it so that the hovering over doesn't.
there is the princess.
I'm looking at. I'm just going to do something.
Yeah.
Boo.
Wait, please wait.
Okay.
Continue. You know the lords. Hurry up.
Princess. I've never used a princess.
It is a character
Say,
that
you-
fights
I'll-
stuff.
I'll permit you to say, don't bring these.
Okay.
Yeah.
So princess. Well, I've seen people bring the princess though. Like, is she good?
Yeah, and they fucking die every time.
They easily die. It's a ranged lord. It's like a worse. Like the main thing is you can put them on a mount compared
They
to a
don't even
Lithanar.
have armor piercing. That's
No, they
what's
don't even
awful
have
about
armor
them.
piercing, so they're not good. Okay.
Yeah, you can
moving
put them
on.
on a dragon if you want to have an expensive, worthless unit.
Prince. Yeah. I mean, what items? Actually, never looked at these items ever before.
It is a prince.
No, that's the usual trash. That's not good either. What's this one got?
Oh man, the
Not
extra
good.
missile parry for his silver shield.
That's terrible as well. So yeah, just no, just don't. Maybe experiment and figure out what these two do because nobody else knows.
Yeah,
A Lithanar.
no one, because all of the other high elf lords are just superior to those basic ones.
You've got a Lithanar.
Princess, yeah, bad.
A Lithanar, he's a shooty boy. He's got armor piercing missiles, which makes him superior to the princess.
Superior to
the
the princess.
Pretty trolly before, but now he has like a legitimate matchup against Sisters of Twilight. And
Oh, yeah.
occasionally greenskins.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, you can bring him. He snipes them really badly. Actually, they're pretty
Yeah.
annoying because he has he can decoy with stock and he can basically outsnipe them, which is
And
really
he's
annoying
got
for them.
300 fucking range.
Yeah, he's
and
really
some
annoying for them to
good
deal with.
missile damage as well. Yeah.
Yeah, he's very annoying for them.
Cool. Anything else to say?
And
about
also
his-
he's got that
Um,
mislead ability, which
he's
allows him to
basically-
create a secondary unit.
Yeah, he's kind of like Wilfric. You can bring him for a few factions, like you can bring him against stuff like Coasts as well. If you, I mean, you can. I wouldn't say it's what you do against Coasts.
Show
You can.
Luther Arkin what it really means to be off.
Yeah, basically those lords like that fly and are just annoying to kill sometimes, he can deal with them because he just applies constant pressure. Especially if you're constantly hiding them and decoying them, moving them around, and they're just losing health. So more so against factions that can't heal is kind of annoying. So
You can
yeah.
whittle down a lot easier.
Chaos.
Yeah.
If
Now-
you're- if-
Greenskins is a really good one because Greenskins are kind of susceptible to Lord Sniping. Having a Lithanar just to like kill Wurzak for
Whittle
free
them down.
is
Yeah.
quite fun.
Now, I will note this because I'm insulted that this man has 3 items because I've literally never even heard of these 2. So I don't even like my boy Luke here gets 1 item. He gets his
Yep.
Helm of the Kraken, but this guy, another
Yeah.
3LC, gets 3. Why
Yeah,
does-
Dark Elves are because Dark Elves are getting shit on buff.
Oh,
These
yeah.
DLC win.
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
you explain?
DLC win.
Are these anything? Are these good?
Let's see. Shadow of the Crown.
The second one is kind of useful against.
22% resistance.
You can bring it against Wood Elves now. Again, I think
yeah, that'd
Wood
probably
Elves
be
is
pretty
one of the
good, actually,
matchups that he's viable. If you go like Shadow Warrior Gang, which actually outsnipes. If you play it properly, you can beat Waywatcher spam with
Stone
Shadow
of Midnight,
Warriors.
if you use that. as well.
Stock.
Yeah, you bring that. You bring him. You bring him basically counter sisters. You bring your Shadow Warrior squads, and you bring some light cav, and you just like beat the Wood Elves at their own game. It's quite disgusting.
What does this do? Shadow Crown,
That's
5
kind
melee
of
defense.
just no, just
Increased
Two-
melee defense.
not
That
good.
is, yeah, okay. Well, but is this any good?
Moonbow's actually pretty good.
Is it basically
It's
just a Hour of Kurnos?
Yeah,
Yeah.
uh-huh.
Yeah, it
It's a
just,
bit better. It actually has.
Ooh, actually hits.
just 360 no scopes the target off of their mount.
Nice. What would you recommend as a target for the Moonbow?
Word probably.
Yeah, Lord, Caster, Artillery piece, maybe?
Destroy artillery
No,
pieces.
he's gone.
No, sorry, I was too busy on something. No, I do not believe it destroys artillery. It's mainly used for characters. Usually
Characters.
unarmored characters. See, as much as it says it does armor piercing damage, it's not really a whole lot.
It's not-
It doesn't feel like it anyway. You more use it for like casters. Just to
okay.
get them quick.
Making off casters quickly.
Yeah. Again, if you bring it against a faction like Hosts, and they have usually they'll bring their vampire captain not on the crab. If that hits, it actually does quite a lot of damage.
Interesting. Might bring him on crab in future.
I mean, I wouldn't bring. I mean, you can, but I still wouldn't say this is the play for against. Hosts.
No, yeah, I don't say probably not either. No. Anyway, onto the
Away from
Archmages,
Sword Crab.
who are all the same, I believe, except from the fire
Fair.
one, who can be put on a dragon instead of Oh,
They're
just the dragon.
mages.
They're mages. Actually, no,
They're
can the
mages.
Archmage fly? Is there an Archmage fire? Yeah, yeah.
Fire can go on a dragon.
Can
yeah.
go on a dragon? Can go on a dragon. But the rest, oh no, all of them can.
It's
it's the regular mage.
all of the archmages can go on dragons.
Yeah.
The regular fire mage can go
What
on
kind of
dragon.
dragon is it? A moon dragon. All right.
I believe
It's a moon.
Is all of them moon? I don't know if some of them get a star dragon.
Yeah, I think they get different dragons based on their lore of magic.
No, they all
they're
get
all
moon.
moon.
I can remember. The fire normal hero version gets a sun dragon.
Yeah, we'll go into the mages later. Items. Oh yeah, what do you think of the Book of Hoeth? There's also this.
Really?
You can do like a sneaky strat, I know, with like putting high archmages on a great eagle, and then you can fly them around with armor of the stars and just snipe things randomly off. I don't know. What do you think of that, Alexis?
I don't rate it, but
Rate it.
you can.
Do you rate archmages in general as a lord option?
There's like 2 situations I bring them in. Archmage of Fire against Ghost is the usual go-to play. And just generally against, if you're expecting like an absolute metric ton of artillery against like Empire or something, you can bring High with that
That's so
cloak thing.
So
Yeah.
I see that do pretty well.
But other than that, I don't really.
How good is the Book of Hoeth? Do you always bring that?
Not really. I don't even think I bring it in the Ghost build actually. Because they get Arcane Conduit. I think I'm pretty sure they get Arcane Conduit.
they
all
get
get
Arcane
Arcane
Conduit.
Conduit. It's just pretty much,
Yeah.
hey, I want to burn through my reserves even
Yeah,
faster.
this is just making it fast. This isn't giving you any extra really.
Give you any extra magic, it just makes you gain the magic back faster.
So
And
archmages
it's
onto
just it.
Imric. How do you rate Imric?
Emric,
the
the
Raymond foot
boy,
usually
the
just big one.
boy
The
himself.
boy Imric.
There was a faction which I like Emric against. It's Skaven. I still think he's pretty good against Skaven.
Interesting, yes. Continue.
Not on the dragon though.
Not on the dragon, no, on a horse.
On the horse.
yeah.
Purely for
Dragonhorn.
Dragonhorn.
Yeah, because causing fear,
Yes.
melee attack to everything.
Pretty much.
That is pretty good, yeah.
He also absolutely slaps all their big characters and monsters that they can bring now. So like the Hellpit Abomination or Throt, because they all have regen. If you go over to his items, so basically you pop, you do this disgusting combo. This is basically, if you go back to his abilities for a second. So Dragonhorn is the main kind of holding it together. Again, fear for your whole army is OP against the faction with low leadership. So great, plus 24 melee attack. You just cleave through like Skaven slaves and stuff. Whenever you come up against, like, if you come up against a blob or like a monster mash, that's the new kind of Skaven builds they can do. You basically want to pick off the big monsters that are keeping it together. So things like the Hellpit or Throt, if he puts himself out of position, or just another Brood Horror. You immediately pop his other ability, which is, I want to say that's the Lord of Dragons. Yes.
That's for a melee attack.
That is just a big. The minus 40 melee attack keeps Emric alive, which is good because he is a little bit squishy, so you kind of need a life mage with him. But the main thing is the minus 24 melee defense, just to guarantee that you hit. And then if you go over to items, and then you pop his Star Lance at the same time, and it's basically, you see it gives him fire damage, and it also gives 22% fire damage weakness on top of the already bad weakness to fire damage from the regen. And he slaps all this big regenning monsters.
These stats here aren't exactly right because he has murderous mastery as well. Well, not martial
mastery.
Murderous.
They all blend together into my head.
The Dark Elf all along, boys.
He also has 45% fire resist, a bit missile. Everything has that missile resist.
Yeah.
But this basically makes his stats pretty good, especially when you throw in charge bonus and then you throw in Lord of Dragons that you're debuffing. He has really good stats.
Yeah. He's kind of like a shock cav, but in a single model. You activate all his buffs, not including Dragonhorn. Dragonhorn's just a big army buff, but his ability and his item, you basically proc that when he's running into combat, and then when it wears off, you run him away again.
Cool.
Just like a shock cavalry, but as a lord.
Now on to Tyrion.
Tyrion, the boy.
The other boy.
That goes, oh, I'm dead, but not.
Always on horse,
Tyrion's.
I see.
Yeah, pretty much always on the horse. Tyrion, unless you're placing dwarves, which he's very much fit.
Oh yeah, because he has.
I still quite like him against dwarves, to be honest.
I can see that because his physical resistance, extra stats there. Yeah, this heal
if you're not bringing the Wario, you can bring Tyrion.
The Heart of Avalorn is.
Yeah, Heart of Avalorn's kind of the only item I really bring on him.
Don't bring a Sunfang.
Sunfang, if you're like, I don't know, if I'm like bored and
Like,
bringing against
I'm
vampire
bored. I
counts.
just want to see a big flashy fire wave.
If you're like, I'm against vampire counts or Norse, and I'm like, I don't know how to get rid of all their infantry. Oh, I'll bring Sunfang.
I'll just burn them. Yeah, they're dead.
Yeah.
But yeah, Star of Avalon can be a very good surprise heal. But usually means you don't really want to bring a life caster with him, do you?
Not really, no.
Because he
I
hit
don't
his
think
healing
we
cap
should.
so quickly.
Yeah,
He
basically
literally
regens his full damage.
1800 health.
Yeah, it's basically just hit his healing cap, I'm pretty sure. That's all the
I
healing he
don't
needs.
really, honestly, it's unfortunate. I don't really like Tyrion that much.
No, yeah, you think with he
Tyrion
used to be
about
good, but
shit.
there's so many more lord options now that are just better.
Yeah,
More
the
colourful.
main, like, as much as they have some interesting lord choices, the two big ones are coming right up next.
Yeah, the next two. Pigeon Queen. You put her on a pigeon.
Pigeon
You
Queen.
very rarely put her on. Well, you might put her on a horse, but definitely not on foot. Usually
Yeah,
you see the
never
Pigeon
on
Queen on a pigeon. Abilities, of course, you got the magic buffing ones. Do you bring Boon of it? I see you would maybe bring it if you don't have any other sources of magic damage and you're expecting ethereal.
Depending on
Ethereals.
the faction you're against, yeah.
Yeah. So like if you're expecting ethereal units, I'd say you bring it.
Or even greenskins, you can bring her against.
Oh yeah,
like,
Savage Orcs. Yeah, that would do fairly well.
Savage
as well.
Orc tank.
But it's quite expensive. Actually, 171.
It's actually, yeah, it's not that much.
Since it's a
Like,
purple.
see if you look at how much she costs. You've not took a spell off her yet, and look how much she costs.
Yeah, cost.
She's very cheap,
Pretty
so you
cheap.
can pretty much bring all her abilities because they're all really good.
As for the spells, go through. 'em.
Drop Arcane Unforging.
That's the
Start
only
from the
one
right. That's 2. It costs too much.
Tempest if
Um,
you're expecting flying.
Yeah, Tempest if you're against the flying unit or flying army or something. You just
Arcane
Temple of Doom.
Unforging.
That's not great.
Isn't Arcane Unforging actually quite good against any like single target units? Like
It
if you're dealing
used
with
to
a really,
be.
did they buff nerf it?
It used to be pretty good against stuff like greenskins, because it used to stop Wa, which is quite funny.
That was funny.
So
'Cause it
you
was a
used to
general
stop.
ability.
Basically, High Elves used to stomp greenskins purely because of Alarial Arcane Unforging, because you would one snipe their lord, which is really bad for them, and you would stop Wa. So that was like greenskins used to struggle with that ability, but now it's
Sad
not
Wa.
tied to that.
Now it's happy
So
Wa.
yeah, so now
Still,
Wa's
it-
just like whoa.
Yeah, I feel uncomfortable using Arcane Fortune because it's 16 winds of magic, and when you have option like with
Yeah.
Earthblood and like banishments and just mainly banishment and Earthblood, I
It's
just feel like
basically
a
not
better,
worth it anymore.
better
It's
cost
just
of
not
wind
worth
of
it
magic.
anymore.
Because it only affects one unit as well. Like unless you're specifically planning to piss someone off by sniping their lord, it's not really need to bring that.
So that's
Man,
just
I
the
want
typical
to
spells.
my money, like pissing off my opponent by being like, I killed their lord.
Kill the Lord, yeah. No war for you.
Oh,
That usually used to be how it worked.
Wait, no.
So that would be usually the two spells, unless you're expecting flying, then maybe you bring a Tempest, but that's the normal setup, right, Alexis? Sounds good. Items for Alariel. Shield Sin of Isha, is that good? 12% physical resistance? In an area of effect? I suppose that if you're expecting a very tight formation, like a box, if you're going up because against vampire camps,
yeah.
you'll often play like a box formation.
Like you could use it with rangers too.
Yeah, with with anything really. But the problem is it's a 40-meter radius, so you're not going to be. Usually you spread
Very
out ranges, so you don't have them quite close together to affect more than one at a time. So if you're playing like a tight box formation, you might bring that, but otherwise I don't think that's too good. That's just a huge, no miscast chance means you can overcast Earthblood all the time without having to risk, and you get a huge power recharge rate. So that's a pretty good one. Oh, they only get one charge of it, so it's debatable. How much is it? It's 126. That's not too bad. I'd say that's worth bringing sometimes. Star of Avalon, of course, is the huge heal that you get, which is why Alariel is so famous for just having a goon squad with her, like 2 dragons or 2 arcane, or 2 big birds basically. That you just run, or 2 nobles even, that you can just drop Star of Avalon on and heal them massively up. Because 2 of those, that's 2,160 HP, which is the healing cap for basically every unit.
Wouldn't those items make Imrik solid versus low leadership greenskins and Norska as well?
Yeah, I'd say
No.
I could see that against Greenskins with the Dragonhorn.
No, because they clap him.
Do they?
You see the Stone Troll blob meta?
Oh yeah, I can see that.
You
Don't
kill
go-
him
Yeah.
for free. See the moment he charges in, even with all his buffs, Scarstick pops fermented fungi, and then you're like, oh shit, my lord's stuck, and then he's dead because he's actually. Emmerich is really squishy. As much as he has good stats, he takes hits really, really hard. Like he's only got 3,000 HP. Basically suffers from the curse of being an elf. he doesn't have Tyrion's like better at lasting in melee because he just heals half his HP back, which makes him good for it. Emmerich doesn't have that bonus, so that's why he's more like a shot capital. Like you get him in and out. The greenskins, when you charge him in, he's stuck and then he dies, and then your lord's gone.
He's cursed by being
and you usually, and when you do that, that means you've lost his Dragonhorn as well, which is like the main reason you bring him. Norska basically the same. Sometimes a little bit more lenient, because generally I think Norska kind of struggles with high elves a little bit, especially Dragon Princes. And Emmerich, you can literally run around with Dragon Princes, and they just like clean up everything. I just think Hilario was a little bit better at it than him.
Fair enough. We've gone through all of Hilario's items. Star of Avalon, amazingly good heal if you're packing those single entities like nobles and dragons and the like.
Yes.
Along with Earthbloods, basically means you're always going to hit healing caps.
She's the best healer in the game.
Pigeon Queen. On to another healer. Well, wizard. Teclis. The magic Pigeon Queen.
Teclis, because you bring him on as Big Phoenix.
Yes, you bring him on as Big Phoenix now that he recently got, which makes him a fairly decent melee combatant with terror.
You say fairly good. He's
not being dog shit.
Huge fire resistance, causing terror.
Really good at melee as well.
Because all I remembered Teclis back in the day was that he would just fucking die. He would just die.
And now you put him on his Phoenix. He suddenly doesn't die because he gets 2,000 extra health throwing him on his Phoenix. And it's huge extra stats. Although look at that, he doesn't have the 15% missile resist anymore.
He becomes better at defending himself by being on a Phoenix, where it's kind of the reverse of what most lords deal with, is that when they go on a mount, their melee attack and defense stats get worse. For him, it gets better. Like, there's no reason not to bring him on the Arcane Phoenix.
And when you throw in like the potion as well, means he's really difficult to kill, because you get that potion extra healing, and then you've got his spell abilities which give like an extra 11% damage resistance, and you also give everything fire weakness, which when he deals fire damage as well, whenever he's casting spells. He's got Enfeebling Foe, so if there's a specific lord that's giving him trouble, he can get rid of that. He's got Net of Amantok, so he can net things down and run away, or just tie things down for missiles. He's got Chain Lightning, so if everything blobs up on him, he can just Chain Lightning and kill everything around him. He's just got access to a really good lot of spells.
He's got pretty much spells for every situation.
These spells are versatile spells, so you can really bring them in which matchup you need them. So like, if you want to net something down and shoot it, or just catch it, then Net of Amantok, Chain Lightning if you're expecting big blobs, Flaming Sword of Ruin if you want to deal magic or fire damage, which you usually do, Enfeebling Foe, which is just normally always good, Flock of Doom can be good against like big masses of infantry and stuff, and Regrowth if you're going to pack like an extra Arcane Phoenix or Dragon with him. His items. This one I don't typically bring. It's a hex that you can use on an enemy, which it's like an Arcane Ungut Forging, and the fact it gives extra recharge and it reduces the power regen. So against another caster, I think that could be. I've just never really personally used it. I've never seen its effect too much.
It slows it down by a lot. Where instead of like I think it's to a point where it's like, instead of waiting like 15 seconds for a new spell point, you wait like 30 or like 40, which can be agonizing.
That could be, yeah. So if you get that early on, you could maybe really slow down someone's casting abilities.
Or make it even worse for some poor bastard that has to wait like 60 seconds for a spell point, and it's like, oh, it's 120 now. I guess I'll just sit here.
On the flip side of that, you've got his Sword of Teclis, which is just it's a really good Arcane Conduit, when he already has access to Arcane Conduit. Greater Arcane Conduit either, so he can get so much magic done because of his item and his Arcane Conduit.
The difference between Arcane Conduit and Greater Arcane Conduit is Greater Arcane Conduit. The greater one is constant. You never have to press it. There's no, oh wait, I forgot the Arcane Conduit. It's just always on.
It's just a constant ability that just gives him just an overall huge increase to power recharge and reserves. Anyway, on to Altharion, which is just a sort of sad state of affairs to go on from Alarion and Teclis to Altharion. Boo! Sad. Do you want to speak for Altharion, Alexis? Why does he have Grim Discipline? Why is that different than Martial Mastery?
Because different.
Oh wait, it's melee attack. No, it's the exact same. Oh no, it's 25% instead of 50%. So it's active for longer, basically. That doesn't help him in the slightest.
That doesn't really help.
He's just too expensive for what he is. Like, if he was cheaper than Alariel and Teclis, I'd say maybe.
But
he's just not
more expensive.
I Even, like if I throw him on foot.
Take
with
his spells off. He's cheaper than Teclis.
all his spells. Yeah, but he doesn't. The worst thing is he doesn't have access to the best of spells either.
Yeah.
Compared to Teclis and Alariel. What do you think about his abilities? Do you get any use of these?
Fine Sword's pretty
I mean,
good.
is the items even?
Fine Sword is
Piercing and
pretty good.
44% physical resistance.
Helm of Ivres is like kind of good. On paper, it looks broken, but
It only lasts 17 seconds.
yeah, and if you bring the main thing about bringing the item is like you need life casting as well to make good use out of it.
Yeah,
because
he's not a life caster.
you throw all your dragon princes in, and then they lose all their HP, right? But they don't die, and then you pull them out, and then you're like, oh, I have a bunch of models that are like no HP, so they get killed by goblin archers.
Yeah, which doesn't help too much.
Yeah, it's basically if he had some form of healing, he would be much better.
Yeah, he has
Natural,
apotheosis, but it's just nowhere near as much of a heal. As
Yeah,
it should be.
he was like Earthblood, but
Yeah,
to one
but
unit.
onto one entity.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Oh yeah.
Does Mistwalker's Barrage do anything? I've never seen it too much.
It's like no, I don't think it does that much.
I don't think it does anything now.
I think it helps him get out of blobs a little bit. I think it can like disrupt and help him run away, but
It's not too helpful.
not
and he's
amazing.
and he's an underwhelming duelist at best as well, compared to like
Yeah,
Imric and
Very
Tyrion.
like you could get Imric and he's better in every
Yeah.
way.
The only upside is well, even then you can bring Imric on his dragon. Compared like
Yeah.
so if you drop all his spells, see how that looks. Take his items, because that's what, and then you bring. So that was for 227. The same. Well, actually, no, he's more expensive, but you get the better attacks and the better stats overall. So he's just a bit of underwhelming, sadly.
Very underwhelming for what he's being paid for. Like if he was base like 1700, that actually wouldn't be so bad because the stats aren't that great.
No, they're not. They get even worse when you put them on a Stormwing as well.
I feel like they're overestimating the passive ability of like the slightly longer lasting martial.
Yeah, they're overestimating how good that
prowess,
would be, which is just not too helpful.
which is already not that.
Oh, actually, he
not-
loses it when you put him on Equus. Oh, and there's Griffin.
Oh, okay, so
He only has it on horse or on foot. So stats just drop dramatically when you put him on his big bird, which is usually what you want to put him on.
yeah,
So that
to
is
make
just
him
that's his
actually-
selling point, because he's got a Griffin when no other lords have a Griffin.
So, that's so hilarious.
That is
dumb.
just so sad. That's the next. How much are you losing out on there? 12,
Losing.
8 on top of 9 and 11. That's
Yeah.
so
12
much of a
and-
stat decrease.
Oh my god. It makes it it makes it actually worthless. You have to bring him on a horse to make him actually not
Stat-wise,
garbage
helpful,
melee
but-
stat.
Yeah. So that's just not
So
very good.
should we talk about the magic the High Elves out for now?
The high magic.
Yeah, I mean all the magic I guess since
Oh my
the
god.
magic.
Oh, all the magic now. We'll do that in a separate
No.
video, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's his one section.
Yeah, this is already dragging on as it is. Speaking of which, let's go move on. Handmaiden of the Everqueen. Alexa, speak. I never use these.
I never use them either.
Who uses these?
They're like
we know who
I've
uses them.
never seen them before, so
they like snipe things. They kind
They
of
do have armor
shoot
piercing
one
missile.
thing. The main thing is that they do fire and magic damage. If you're bored, you can bring them against like vampire counts and snipe a banshee.
If they bring a
one.
banshee, but why would they bring a banshee?
Or
or their lord because they are armor piercing though, so
Yeah, you could maybe use them as a similar regard to Lithanar, just worse and more,
I'd say-
and,
Yeah.
like
Well,
not worth
yeah,
the
I
price.
say yeah, they're less the price, but I think the purpose for them is to
You kinda
just
like-
like you said, put pressure on their enemy lord, so that it's like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm shooting you, and so
Yes.
they can fire
They just
fire
don't
while
have.
moving.
It's just that they have. Yeah, but the problem is they have the same range as like regular archers. So
Oh yeah, they don't have nearly as
Oh,
much
yeah.
range as Lithanar does.
That's
200.
why I don't rate them that highly. See if they had like
If they had
lord
like
level
250,
range,
Yeah,
20.
yeah, maybe they'd be
they
better.
could be good. But
But right now they're just a bit lacking in terms
you
of
can
the
kind
stat
of
department.
use them as zone out like lord heroes. Like if you bring like I don't know against Dark Elves just because they're there. Like you could kind of use them to zone out Marathi or something, I
Mm.
guess. But I still wouldn't rate it.
I wouldn't
Like,
rate it.
I even saw what was it? We played a game. It was against ASD, I'm pretty sure, and he brought two of them to try and counter Sisters of Twilight, and even then, Sisters just sat out range and killed them, like
Hmm.
for free. if the same reason you bring them, I feel like you just bring a bolt thrower and it does the job.
Bolt thrower for cheaper.
Yeah.
Nobles are the bread and butter of.
Nobles are good.
Lads.
Good hero.
Yeah, good hero. Typically seen as a squad with a Alaria. That used to be the med in
double noble chariot.
Double noble chariot. Really good against nearly every faction. Gets good against dwarves as well. It's the main counter against dwarves as well because of the chariot. Although now with the model buffs, that probably has changed a bit.
Yeah. Well, against cavalry, chariots still get caught, but they can still pull through enemy units.
But because of just how much health they have, you can really get some really good value with Star of Avalon and healing and the likes.
Yeah.
And their charge bonus means they can just keep cycling through stuff and they'll guarantee to hit anything.
Yeah.
They also have their murderous martial prowess. Even I keep saying murderous, they're not dark elves. So they do actually have some better stats than
actually,
Sims.
The only difference as well with the Grimm's thing is that he gets more melee attack, which is still not that good.
Does he?
Yeah, he gets 8 instead of normal martial prowess, which is 2.
Oh yeah, that'd be martial prowess. Yeah, I was looking at martial mastery, which is just the exact same, I think. Is that?
Yeah, it's exact same, except it just lasts longer. Why is the Grimm even there, anyways? He doesn't even deserve to be called by a name.
Yeah, I don't know. He doesn't even deserve a title. I mean, it's Alario the Radiant. It's Techless, they're nothing. Tyrion, they're nothing. Imric, they're nothing.
No, you only need Techless to know that. Do you ever bring nobles without a chariot? You can.
Yeah, you can bring them on a horse as well.
On a horse, they're armor piercing. They're very good for sniping lords.
Yeah, when they're on a horse, they lose their sort of goodness against infantry, and they can become quite vulnerable to infantry. But they become slightly better at sniping single entities.
Yeah, they're very, very scary that way. You can bring them around, bring them with like a... Well, I guess if you're bringing Tyrion, you can bring 2 nobles on horses as well, and then you could just kill any armored large
bring
unit.
no caster as well, while you're at it.
Yes, bring no caster as well.
Do the willow play. Speaking of casters, mages. These are all the same apart from the Mage of Fire, which can be put on a dragon as well. Which does synergy well, because obviously the dragon does fire damage, and she provides a fire weakness for everything. There's some plays to be had there, perhaps. But,
her stats are not actually bad
on a dragon. Yeah, it's basically dragon stacks. I'm pretty sure it's the exact same. It's a sun dragon, I believe.
Yeah, it's...
And it is... Yeah, just less melee attack, 4 less melee attack, which isn't bad when you're considering all the casting you can do.
Yeah, all the casters have around 20 to 30 melee stats, while that on a dragon is really good with 50 and 44, which is really good for a caster.
Alex is still here.
Unfortunately, it's a sun dragon.
Starwood Staff. Do you bring that all the time? I know you don't bring Book of Hoeth, but Starwood Staff good.
Power Reserve is good, though.
Is the increase to Power Reserve? It's temporary, isn't it? It's not permanent.
Yeah, it's temporary.
Yeah, so you usually want to bring both then, so you can quickly drain that Power Reserve. You don't want to just bring one.
It's alright. I think it's a bit expensive for the caster.
Yeah, it is like a lot of... That's like
the high elves are already pretty expensive.
Yeah, it's putting a lot of money into something.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually most of the time you're going to be seeing, of course, if you're not already bringing a Lariel or Techless, then you're going to probably be bringing Law of Life because of the healing. You can also see sometimes like Soul Quenches from Law of High. Where's Law of High? Heavens. No, it's High. Yeah, Law of High. You can see some Soul Quenches from that. You can also see... How do you rate the stacking fire weaknesses build of like Imric and Fire Mage?
I mean, it's alright.
It's a fun build to bring Imric on a dragon and then Fire Mage on a dragon with his
and then you just cast like Flaming Skull or something and just watch something with a bunch of armor just evaporate because
you can stack some good fire damage. Throw in like the Fireborn as well. You can just really have some fun time with fire damage. Throw in the archers as well. Sisters of Avalon.
Make them wish they were dead.
Stack all the fire damage. All of the fire damage. But yeah, that's potential. Going on for mages, Lawmasters of Hoeth. I don't think they're good.
Yeah, he's a thing. He fights things.
Yeah,
I will let you do the heroes. I need to go, I guess, because
Okay. So Lawmasters of Hoeth, I don't believe are very helpful because you're putting your caster on the front line is already pretty dangerous, and he's an anti-infantry, which sure you can use him to cleave through infantry, but he's so expensive for that role, and the fact that he'll lose to like any mounted enemy hero or large entity anywhere.
The other thing to point out is that his stats aren't that great for a melee hero anyways. Like a Black Orc Big Boss will just slap his shed. Most, like even an Exalted Hero might have a chance if it's gets a drop on them.
Yeah.
Because even though they don't have like armor, even if they don't have armor piercing, they still have better melee stats in general.
He also lacks any sort of, because this will be your caster. Because ideally you don't want to bring multiple casters.
Yeah.
He doesn't have any magic regeneration abilities.
The only thing you could really do is give your guys
spells.
more melee defense, I think, with the items.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so he can he can reduce magical resistance. He can increase and +8 leadership.
Yeah. So the only reason you'd use it is to get the resistances and more leadership. But the thing is, you don't need the leadership because high elves already have really high leadership to begin with.
Not to mention that he already gives encouragement as well.
Yeah, so it feels kind of redundant to have him.
Yeah, it doesn't feel
again,
best.
He's really expensive, so you could just bring a caster and then bring a prince and just use them instead because they're superior and less expensive.
Yeah, just not worth it. Moving on to infantry. The cheapest of which is 500 gold at Spearmen. A fairly decent front line all-rounder. The problem is they're so often expected. You do expect to go against basic Spearmen, or like Silver and Guard. They just all the high elf front lines are so similar that they're so easily countered. Basic Spearmen especially, because they're just not very good. They're a good holding unit, good melee defense, but they will get out-traded quite nicely against everything else.
Because of martial prowess.
They get very high melee defense. They get 50.
They get really high, 50 melee defense, but once they go below half, then they start really hurting. Because that's one of the big things against elves, is if you can do a burst of damage very quickly to a lot of their front line, they will begin to crumble really quickly. The only thing that keeps them alive usually is that 70 leadership. That keeps them from breaking and running instantly. And for some reason, elves just don't break. I don't know why.
They just don't. They really like to stick around.
I've seen so many times I just charge them into the back, watch like a quarter of the unit lose, and then it's like they just don't break, and it's weird sometimes. Yeah,
it should be noted that even with martial prowess, they have less melee attack than men at arms with shields, which is why they falter. They don't do any damage. They just have a good holding potential.
Yeah.
Moving on to Rangers, which are the damage dealer anti-infantry. Usually seen them against like things where you're expecting a lot of cheap chaffy infantry, so like Skaven. Maybe against orcs you could see them do some fairly good damage, as long as you're not fighting black orcs. You're gonna do
like savage orcs or something.
Yeah, I think they do trade fairly well against savage orcs.
Yeah, because of because they have their own physical resist plus armor on top of that, unlike savage orcs who have no armor.
So it's not very much, but it's an amount.
Bonus.
They also, of course, then have their martial prowess to help them out in the stats department.
Yeah, until they lose half their health and then become effectively a worthless unit.
Because they have less melee defense, they do lose that a lot quicker, which could be a problem.
Yeah, but they get over 30 when they have martial prowess. So the idea is that.
But compared to Spearmen, they still do.
Compared to Spearmen, it's just not that good. Compared to even the men at arms, they have better. So
low armor as well, and no shield means they're quite vulnerable to missiles, despite they do have a more spread out formation, which can help them.
Yeah, it does help a lot with not taking so much damage from missiles, because spread out units. That's why high elf units, in most cases, it also helps them protect them against spells, because the problem with high elf spear units is that they're so closely packed that a single spell can wipe out half the unit.
Or artillery as well works well, like catapults and trebuchets and the like. Moving on to White Lions of Trace, which are the basically armor piercing frontline option, but they are really bad outside of the fact they're armor piercing. Stat wise, they're just not
30%
that good.
missile resist.
Yeah, the 30% missile resist helps them. Basically means they have a bronze shield, but it's from all directions.
They have a bronze shield from all It's okay. It's like if you're against a ranged faction, they won't die as fast as other armor piercing infantry.
Yeah.
And their stats actually aren't awful.
Yeah.
But the problem is that they're more expensive than Chaos Warriors with great weapons who have better armor and also better melee attack and defense without martial prowess.
So these don't tend to work too well unless you're expecting like a big armored enemy force, which you can't really do. So against dwarves, I say, is the only solid bet that you can bring these in.
Yeah.
Scions of Matlan. The unique thing for them being the ROR of the Spearman unit. Of course, they have better stats, which means they can get to 60 melee defense when they've got their martial mastery, prowess even. But the main thing is that they give 12% damage resistance as long as their mana is above 50%. which is such a weird niche small ability. It's
like in most cases you're not going to just sit on your mana, or unless you're planning on using very small mana costing spells, you're never going to benefit from that.
Yeah, not only that, but you're typically not going to keep, because considering that it's a blob, a unit, it makes it a lot harder to give that buff to things around it, because without like clipping into each other.
Yeah, the actual range of it is so ridiculously small. I think the range, the unit literally has to be right up against the other unit.
Yeah, because if you stretch out, because it only takes it from the middle of the unit, and if you stretch out the unit, it's like 20 meters already. So you're not giving much room, basically.
It is awful. You don't bring these guys. You're better off just bringing.
I'd say maybe bring them if you're doing like a box, maybe, and you can maybe leave them in the middle.
I guess so.
That's about the only potential I see for them. And also because they are just worse than Sylvan, which are the most recent infantry edition, with the
technically a better version than them.
Yeah, I believe so in all regards.
Yeah, because they're straight up magic resist. So if you know you're up against a force that might bring, like, if you're afraid of Flaming Skull, if you're afraid of spells just wrecking your units, or you're against like Bretonnia, Sylvan Guard's actually not that bad.
They also have a higher bonus versus large. So despite being not armor piercing, these do very well against like actually quite armored monsters. Despite not being armor piercing, I've seen them take down Hippogriffs Knights quite easily.
Yeah, or let's say like Grail Guardians or something.
Yeah.
They're magic resistant and also have a ton of
melee defense,
like
and
armor
and silver shields. Just makes them strong. Right?
Like they're just like they're worth, for all intents and purposes. These guys are definitely worth the cost that they are.
Yeah.
Like if you bring 3 or 4 of them, there's not much that's going to break through, with the exception of like heavy infantry designed to punch through the center.
The only problem with them is the fact they're so expensive. It makes them hard to be brought as a front line, because it either means you're going to have a small front line, or you're just going to have to like take money away from other areas.
Yeah, the best case scenario is that they're like a budget Phoenix Guard. Think of them like that.
Yeah,
like
basically.
If you want to have really good backline protectors, you bring the Silver Guard, because spells won't break them very easily. Like I don't even think Pendulum does super well against them.
No, especially since it's been nerfed.
Yeah, ever since it's been nerfed, Pendulum actually isn't as useful as it used to be against Silver Guard. Like instead of like taking half the unit, you only take like a fifth.
Yeah.
They're very worth their money.
Moving on to the pure main company, which is the ROR White Lines of Trace. They have their main thing being the fact they have armor sundering, so if you want to mix them in with other infantry, like especially spearmen, they can help quite a bit, or rangers even. Yeah, they also have Guardian, which isn't too helpful because most of the time you're not bringing a foot lord, you're bringing a mobile lord, and so you can't just keep them up with it. So mainly you bring them for the armor sundering.
I could see them, like, if you're facing like a regular orc army and they brought a bunch of orc boys, they'd be pretty nice because orcs have around 30 armor, or empires around 30 armor, and then rangers will just
chew through them quite nicely. Yeah. But the Guardian ability is kind of wasted, to be honest, because you're never really bringing a foot lord.
Unless you bring like a prince or a swordmaster, a Hoeth or something.
Yeah, if you bring a swordmaster or Hoeth, you could pair that with him, but I think that's the 2 bad units you sort of mixing together, and a bad lord. It's just like it's not
that it's slightly not garbage.
If I mix all the terrible together, it can make it slightly less terrible.
Oh boy.
Swordmasters of Hoeth, these are the armor piercing anti-infantry for all intents and purposes. I like bringing a unit of them against orcs, I'd say.
I think the best thing to call the White Lines of Trace is the budget version of the Swordmasters of Hoeth.
Yeah, basically.
The Swordmaster of Hoeth also have a shield. They count as having a shield,
so they're amazingly quick. They can block bullets with that somehow.
Yeah, they're such chads that they're just able to cut the arrows, like cut the bullet out of the air, like some fucking anime or something.
Their 14 bonus versus infantry puts them to 60 melee attack plus an extra 62, and they have the melee defense of extra 12, so almost 60-60, which is amazingly good stats.
Swordmasters of Hoeth will literally beat out a lot of other anti-infantry,
almost every other
infantry, with a few exceptions, except like the ones with really high melee defense.
Like, maybe like Chosen with great weapons. They'll lose against
Chosen with great weapons will beat the living hell out of them.
Their main problem is they're just such prime targets for AoE effects because of how tight their formation is and how expensive they are. Just like they're prime targets for artillery, explosives, anything other like. So try and keep them away from that, or keep them out of range of that. But they're quite nice as a good supporting unit in the front line.
Yeah, they're very good. Phoenix Guard though is like
the anti-large version of them, basically.
Yeah.
They also have Martial Mastery, which is the upgraded version, and physical resistance, so they are very good holding units. Again, suffering from the fact that they're amazing targets, They cause fear. That's not often used too much because obviously they're mainly used against big armored anti-large or large creatures, which are usually already immune to fear.
Well,
they cause
if we're talking about like an Arachnarok spider, though, that -10 will make it route faster, which is what you want.
If it causes fear, it's immune to fear.
Oh yeah. So
yeah,
like
it is also immune to fear penalties.
Yeah, that is true. So it would work against most cavalry, but except monsters would be redundant.
So a bit of a missing ability there, not really used so much.
It's nice to have, but it's not going to be really that useful.
But obviously their stats get to a crazy degree when you throw in the bonus versus large. They get to 58 plus an extra 8. That's 66 melee attack plus how much melee defense? 52 melee defense. So a really good stat unit as long as they're fighting the right target. But again, very expensive, making them really good targets for missiles, especially armor-piercing missiles. They do have a lot of armor, so against cheaper missiles, they won't suffer too badly. But they don't have the bronze shield that swordmasters do.
They're no swordmasters of Hoeth.
They're not going to be able to use those big halberds to knock arrows at the air.
Swordeth.
So quite weak to the old missiles. The Keepers of the Flame, their unique thing. It doesn't say on their unit card, so you might miss it. Well, it says up here, but
bombers, guys. That's what they are.
They explode when they die.
They've got like C4 on their chest, and they're like for I don't know. Well, what's the elven place called?
Oh, which one?
The donut.
Alt one. That's the one.
For Alt one, and then you just go.
Boom.
Boom. Like if you throw them into any like other unit in the game, they will just beat them because of suicide bomb.
Yeah, that and just how good their stats are. If you throw in Martial Mastery, they're basically triple gold chevron Phoenix Guard, and the fact they explode, they'll beat nearly everything in combat. The problem is that they're slow, so they don't catch most things. They're amazingly good targets because of how expensive they are, and they're just not terribly good because of those things.
The other thing is that their explosions won't work against a magic resistant unit, so anything that actually does have magic resistance will survive better against the explosion.
They do also deal magical damage, but again, the things that excels them, they can usually anything that weak to magic damage can usually outrun them, which is the problem they have. Usually, just in general with Phoenix Guard, is you only really see them because of their slow speed. You only really see them in boxes. There's not really much else because using them as a backline is just a waste of their ability. You'd be much better off using Sylvan Guard because they're cheaper. Like it's a lot cheaper for a backline unit that's going to do this same sort of effort. So you usually only see them in box formations. Now with all elves, bows, lots of bows. Archers, not as cost efficient as Peasant Bowman, but still pretty close. Pretty close if you compare them.
The one thing that I've noticed with high elf high elf archers in general is that they have very good accuracy.
Yeah, they are much more accurate.
If you shoot at a mass unit, they almost tend to hit every shot. A lot of the time, if you shoot an infantry unit.
They don't have really, they're not melee stats. Even though they have martial mastery, martial prowess, they're not gonna do anything in melee. They're cheap, expendable archers. The same reason you bring Peasant Bowman. They're just a bit more expensive for a little bit of extra range, more or less.
Probably every new player would probably recognize the Death Star build, where you bring like
a swarm of archers.
Just a bunch of Lothran Sea Guard plus like archers and
blot out the sun with arrows.
A lot of arrows blot out the sun.
Archers with light armor, very much the same story, just more armor. I wouldn't see the worth in extra 50 cost for more armor, to be honest. Maybe against yeah, if you're expecting unarmored missiles, but that's a very niche situation.
Yeah.
So I can't really see that being helpful. Lothran Sea Guard are the ability that they're basically archers, but their uniqueness is the fact that they can hold on their own fairly well.
And also have spears, so they get bonus against.
Bonus versus large. I believe they'll still not do great against hounds, but against like skirmish cav and like light cav, that will get into the back line.
Attack isn't enough, so
you can usually do fairly nicely against anything that would normally. So it means you don't have to sacrifice for a backline unit. Is basically what you're paying for there. Is you make the decision of, do I want archers and backline protection, or do I just want Lothran Sea Guard? The shield variant is pretty much the same, except from although I don't believe the shield is activated while it's shooting. Is it?
No, they activate while they're shooting.
Is it while they're shooting? So that makes them much better against other ranged units. So typically you'll see the shielded version, even if it is 100 gold more, the extra melee defense plus the fact they resist. What is it? How much percentage is it? 55%, which is just really good against. So typically you'll see the shielded variant more often.
Almost always, because 100 gold more for 50% missile resist, unless they're against a fact that doesn't have missiles or not very good missiles.
Yeah.
Then
like
you
maybe
against
bring
skirmish
Sea
Gav,
Guard
they
instead.
can just outshoot the skirmish Gav and take some of the missiles.
Yeah, and then win a melee if anything decides to charge them.
Then we
the
got
ROR
fire
archers, their main thing is that they're archers, but they do fire damage and they apply a fire weakness.
Yeah.
They do also have martial mastery, which makes their melee defense fairly considerable. So they will actually hold fairly well against anything that tries to crump them.
Yeah, they actually have decent
giving you time
stats.
to defend them with any backline support you might have. They're obviously their main thing is that you're bringing the fire weakness damage, so you might pair them with Sisters of Avalon or any other type of fire damage, so that you can really just maximize the damage on a single target. Besides that, they're just more of a gimmicky unit. Besides that, so. But moving on to Shadow Warriors, Alexa said earlier how they can counter skirmish Way Watchers. They are basically the Way Watchers for the High Elves, but they don't have armor piercing, which is why they're worse than Way Watchers.
Yeah, but they are also good against like artillery factions where you want your archers to survive to be able to shoot on the targets sometimes, or against longer range skirmishers. Like you don't want grenade launchers to know where you are. You want them to have to micro up and then try and shoot you, while you get to shoot them right off the bat.
They're very weak to like heavy armored cav that might try and just run them down. So against factions like Bretonnia and stuff, you probably don't want to bring it. But most of the time against other skirmishing, so like against wood elves, I especially like them because they just do so well against all their skirmishers and all their lightly armored stuff.
And with martial prowess, they have decent stats.
Decent stats, yeah. They have actually decent stats fairly already. 36 melee attack, and then add on the martial prowess means they'll probably beat hounds and most like cav in combat. Especially if you have a large group of them, so you can have like one unit engaged and the rest will just keep shooting whatever they're engaged with. Means you'll probably win most melee fights with other skirmishers.
Yeah, they can actually like against hounds and stuff. So the weakest stuff will.
Yeah, we'll probably lose to them. Yeah. The Storm Riders, yeah. I don't know why you'd bring these ever. Their only thing is they cause fear, and they fire while moving. That's it.
So they're just.
And it's considering they don't have 360 fire.
Shadow warriors that are fear causing.
Yeah, and they don't have 360 fire. They just fire forward when moving.
That's so dumb.
It is just kind of useless.
They're worst shadow warriors.
Yeah, more or less they're just worse shadow warriors. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they have more melee defense, but that's it. And they can't shoot 360 or anything, so not too useful there. Sisters of Avalon are basically your big damage dealing armor piercing. It's your only armor piercing missile option. Apart from eagle bolt throwers, but amazingly good at shredding through unshielded heavy armor.
Sometimes, because actually I remember one time I played you played like the High Elves and brought like 2 Sisters of Avalon and those other fire arrow guys, and I just brought a front line of Chaos Warriors and Chosen, and you couldn't kill them because of the 50%.
So many shields, yeah. You'd have to get like around back with that.
One way of dealing with like high elf armor, like archer blobs, is just bring shields. Bring so many shields that there's nothing good to shoot at, and even if they shoot at one, they lose so much ammunition from shooting at one of them that it's just not worth it.
Yeah, it's not worth it. But yeah, Sister of Avalon armor piercing missile is usually the same as any other armor piercing. They're also fairly good at melee as well, so they'll do fairly good against any skirmishers trying to get them.
Very good at it. Can survive against most other units just fine. They can beat most basic infantry.
But obviously, where they shine is in range, where they can really just decimate any large thing that's coming towards you. Just be careful to keep them away from like cav or big monsters and like.
180 range is really good.
Yeah, 180 ranges. Yeah, for most archers, everything. So it's just pretty good range.
Oh,
those RORs. The grey. What do they do? They have snipe, which means they'll fire while they're hidden, which is considerably good. If you want to do counter skirmishing and the likes, that's pretty good. Also, if you put them behind the enemy, you never know. They may not even notice they're being shot at.
It's like, wait, why is all my artillery units dead? God damn it!
They also have low shrouds, so they'll be even more unspotable, which means that you can get really close and just keep shooting them. Which makes them especially annoying against like artillery factions, against like wood elves as well, because Way Watchers just can't even shoot back if they don't know where they are.
Yeah, and then have to run after them, which you could have Dragon Princes nearby
you could have
or something
to help out. Yeah. So pretty good skirmish unit. Basically, just a really more efficient, better Shadow Warrior unit that you can really be annoying with.
The other system.
Everqueen's Court Guard. Their uniqueness is the fact that they have this banner which improves power recharge rate, which is nice and all. you're
As
usually
long
already
as they're
getting that
alive.
with like all the other caster lords already have an ability like that, and they also have encourage, which makes them. I'd say this is another one that falls under the Phoenix Guard of like put in a box, put it in a nice tight formation. They really
And
excel there.
also, their melee stats are even more ridiculous. They
Yeah,
have
even better melee
45
stats.
and martial prowess, so they've got like they got 60 melee defense. It's ridiculous. They're annoying to kill with infantry. You just use spells on them. Don't bother using anything else. Just use spells.
You can use
cavalry.
I think cavalry is their main weakness though, especially with only 40 armor, like Knights of the
Straight
Realm,
up.
Shot Cav, anything like that. They don't have any charge
yeah.
bonus either.
I've actually had one scenario where the Everkeen's court almost killed Vlad because of how good their stats are. Like, they almost straight up killed him, and it's like, what? I had to pop his like 90% damage resist and throw a spell on them to kill them. They're ridiculous.
Really good. They also have more missile strength as well, so they're just going to be doing a lot more damage dishing out.
As obvious, their their weakness is the fact that they have very low armor, meaning any spell will kill them.
Yeah, we'll shred them.
So you have to be very, very careful and watch them carefully, or your 1400 gold unit is going to get wiped
They
out
also
by like 2 seconds.
An amazingly good target for any ranged, any artillery, any counter ranged, because they have low armor as well. They're really good targets, which is the same problem that Phoenix Guard likes.
What about Shadow Walkers from the sub faction?
Oh yes, of course. How could I forget the sub factions from Nagaroth? What is this? Yeah, these. I can't even remember what these do. What's the uniqueness about these things? They're just lower health, lower models, better in. They have poison. They have bonus for infantry. Yeah. What is this unit? It looks like they're worse, much less health, 1,000 less health for 300 extra gold. Well, actually, no, 250. Yeah. And they do poison, which is good because I mean, there's not much poison in the High Elf roster, so to consider that is actually there's no poison in the High Elf roster. That is the only source of poison in the High Elf roster. Is that right? That is right. Well, there you go. Poison.
Yeah.
They also appear to be pretty good against infantry, also dogs as well, because of the bonus versus infantry. Yeah. Pretty good stat-wise, as opposed to Shadow-wise, but they seem just like more expensive Shadow Warriors, which I don't... For that much, 250 extra, do I really want something that's slightly better in melee when I'm going to be using it to shooting anyway? And the poison. For less health, and only 45 models, which means they're going to be much worse at shooting. Even with the extra missile strength.
You're better off just getting regular Shadow Warriors for the extra numbers.
Yeah, and if I compare them to like the Grey, they're not even that much better than the Grey. Yeah, they only have 2 extra weapon strength, the bonus versus infantry, and the poison. Yeah, and they don't have snipe as well, so they have the lower... No, they don't have low shroud, so yeah. They can be alright, I think. I think you can definitely see the poison application being useful. And if you're going for like a full skirmish army, because you're that kind of person,
like you could bring
Shadow Walkers.
A value unit of 1 Shadow Walker to go with your Shadow Warriors.
Yeah, you could maybe pair them up. Like you probably wouldn't want a full squad of Shadow Walkers. You probably just want a mix of the between the two.
You only need 1 unit with poison to poison everyone.
But the problem is when you go in Nagaroth, I think your opponent can tell what it is you're going to try and do. So you're kind of giving the game away there and losing the element of surprise. So you can just go like full cav and just tear you down, which is the problem. So it can be useful, but I mean, again, being limited by the fact that it's in a sub faction, it really gives the game away. Where was I? High Elves. So there's all the archers through. Down to the cavalry, the Knights of High Elves. This. Alivriel Reavers are everything you expect from a light cav. And a hound unit, basically. Chase off. Aren't going to win any fights, really. They're just going to chase off archers.
Okay charge bonus, though.
Yeah, they have pretty okay charge bonus. Also, a surprising amount of martial... When you throw in martial prowess, alright, melee defense, but they have quite low health, so they're going to be dropping quite quickly when it comes to the martial prowess. Also not much armor as well. Leadership. Compared to for high elves, very low leadership actually. Yeah. Just taking a drink. No. Silver Helms, these are actual knight units. They actually have a much better charged bonus and armor and just general melee stats compared to Alivriel Reavers. So they'll just perform a lot better in terms of melee and winning and chasing off things. They're definitely not going to be any good against other cav. And maybe with a mass of them you might win, but for their price point, like they'll lose to Knights of the Realm, which are about less price. Are they 900? They're 950, yeah. So they'll lose to them, but they're fairly decent for their price point. Chariots, I never really use high elf chariots too much. I know they're fairly needed in the dwarf matchup, but I'm not too familiar with how they're used. Do you know anything about that, Psycho? Psycho?
Sorry. Oh yeah, the chariots. I've used those before. Since they don't have armor piercing, they're not actually that good to bring. They're not worth it.
What about the lion chariots then?
The lion chariots are far better because 1, they cause fear, 2, they're missile resist, and 3, they're armor piercing. They're simply better in every way.
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
200 gold more for fear, missile resist, and
armor piercing. Yeah, so Ithamar chariot's garbage, but white lion
is very bad.
Trace chariot could be much better. Also, with that martial prowess, all of a sudden these chariot units have considerable melee defense for a chariot unit. Dragon Princes, the elite cavalry, very common unit to see against the high elves. Their martial mastery makes their stats really good. They don't have any armor piercing, which is where they probably lack. They do have really high armor and really high holding power, along with physical resistance
and
fire resist can be helpful. Just all around really solid stats.
If you use Sword of Flaming Ruin, you effectively nullify any damage you do to the unit.
Yeah, now that I look at these are just cheaper Grail Knights. Not Grail Knights, Grail Guardians, I mean.
They're cheaper Grail Guardians.
Yeah, and they have actual decent charge bonus compared to Grail Guardians. So
yeah.
They're just... This is what Grail Guardians should have been, basically. Well, maybe take away the charge bonus, but this is basically a more efficient Grail Guardian unit, which actually gets a lot more use because of the charge bonus.
If actually had magic resist, that would have made them very good.
Yeah, something just to make them stand out a bit more.
Damage resist, like 20% damage resist, would have been fine.
That would have been good, yeah. The Fireborn, which are the ROR Dragon Prince, their unique thing is they're actually anti-large, and they have fire damage, making them really good against those lightly armored regenerating monsters like trolls, Grom the Paunch, anything like that, Vargulfs, and the likes. 18 bonus versus large is quite a considerable increase in melee attack.
Very, very big considerable. And also on top of that, you can couple it with fire kindling, buff from your casters.
Yeah, to make him just deal overall more damage. If you pair it with a fire kindle flame, or you can pair it with the archers, you can stack that with the fire debuff, flammable, or you can stack it with Imric's debuff, which is why you'll often see Imric and the Fireborn together, because his Star Lance gives weakness to fire, and then you've got so much fire damage there.
Yeah, it's so good.
Very good there, yeah.
I remember back in the day when like Dragonborn really were, like the Fireborn were ridiculous, because they could beat cavalry most of the time, and it was like you just bring a unit of Fireborn and they just pay for themselves.
They beat everything.
You throw them into a unit, you win.
Yeah, you win pretty easily. Do they have more armor? No, they have the same armors, but they're still very solid, just as Dragon Princes overall. 110 armor is really high.
Very high.
That's more than all Bretonnian cav apart from Grail Guardians.
Yeah.
Which is really good armor. Missile cav, Illyrian Reaven Archers. What are your thoughts on those? I don't tend to use them very much compared to like your other skirmish options like Shadow Warriors and other archers.
But they're very fast, and if you want to control the skirmish game,
they will still be caught by wolves eventually, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. If you're going to be bringing them, actually technically get caught by yeomen.
Yeah, they can be, yeah. And I think they'll lose to them as well. Actually, no, with martial prowess, they might actually win, maybe.
They win.
Yeah, but once that wears off,
they have better leadership.
Yeah, they do, yeah. But yeah, in terms of archer power, if you want archer power, you take the archers. If you want skirmish power, you go with the Shadow Warriors. It's not the greatest thing to go for these. The ROR, what's the difference? They're faster.
Yeah, they're faster.
That's it.
More charge bonus, better stats overall.
Yeah,
and
so
missile strength. So just
a chevroned up unit, basically.
Yeah, just chevron version.
Yeah, so these will actually outrun hounds. So maybe there's a use for them there in that regard, because they'll actually outrun.
You might as well just
basically everything.
More Illyrian Reavers at that point, honestly.
So yeah, not much of a use here, especially with the Tyrion chariots. I think are about the same story, aren't they?
Yeah,
actually, they're quite a bit cheaper than.
Chariot archers are usually good because they do high missile damage, so they're good against single targets.
Yeah, so they do, and they have magic damage,
because they're also magic too.
Yeah, their melee stats are abysmal, even for a chariot. They're really bad.
Their missile strength's 124, so they can kill cavalry pretty well. They can kill monsters really well.
Only 10 of that. Oh, actually, they do the weird shots per volley thing, so it's not quite. Yeah.
150 shots collectively, so they can kill at least 3 units of cav.
It's a fairly decent range as well, so I think trying to be Scourge Runner Chariot, but not quite being a Scourge Runner Chariot,
they don't have the armor piercing that Scourge
don't.
But instead of poison, they have magic, which is good against units with physical resist.
Yeah. But High Elves do already have quite a few options against them. Physical resist, they have Flaming Sword of Ruin for one, which you'll quite often see, and you have obviously Sisters of Avalon and the likes of that.
Yeah.
Monsters and beasts, the big old, mostly flying things, and a couple of lions. Great Eagles. I don't Don't think they're that good.
They're birds. They're
birds.
Very fast. And
send them after a
fast.
caster. Send them into artillery. Send them into some archers.
And the archers, yeah.
The main problem with them is the fact that they take up that single entity cap that you get access to.
They're only 30 armor, so the archer do so much damage to it on the way up. Like I had a game against like this Wood Elf player that decided I'm gonna throw my Great Eagles at this guy's handgunners, and the handgunners killed them took out half their health on their fly up.
Yeah,
it's.
Yeah, they're not terrible. The main problem with them is the fact that they take up that single unity cap that you could use on nobles, that you could use on dragons, you could use on just so much better things than them.
One is a single target entity, and two, their armor is so low that they make them a very easy target to kill.
Yeah, definitely. White Lines of Trace. I don't use these too much.
They're okay. They're fear. They're fear, resist, and they're armor piercing anti-infantry.
I find them
better wolves.
Yeah, I find them in the awkward position that I don't really want to use them as wolves because they're low HP and low melee defense. So I don't really want to, I usually want them to mix into my regular infantry, but at that point, with how expensive high elf infantry is, I tend to spend if I'm doing that sort of mix, it's really expensive front line.
If you're doing one thing you can also use them for is mix them with your cavalry. Mix them with Dragon Princes.
Yeah, I can see that being a thing, yeah, because of the armor piercing.
Those, and then bring 2 Dragon Princes, and they kind of support each other. Like, I've done it with Chaos Knights too. Chaos Knights, Poison Warhounds.
Yeah.
Where both units support each other, and since Dragon Princes don't have fear, you get the fear from the hounds.
I think that actually you can fulfill that with the White Line Chariot as well.
True. Yeah, you bring one
unit.
White Line Chariots, and then
like two of these maybe.
Don't have as many models.
No, they don't. Yeah, that's true. But
they're more expensive.
They do have better performing stats, and the charge bonus can pair well with the cavalry as well, and the movement. I think
they have a 40 charge bonus.
Yeah, 40 is alright.
It's an alright charge bonus. Like they're not that bad, and 50 weapon strength is still good.
Yeah, they still do fairly well.
Yeah, 18 models.
Although the chariot unit does get martial prowess where the regular lines don't.
Yeah, that's
true. So that
true,
definitely does mean their stats are actually quite a bit better on the old chariot unit.
The old chariot unit.
ROR, they have the leadership debuff effect.
They have the button that you press, and it's like, you have, and also they're slow, so they're good for catching units as well.
Yeah, so you could definitely pair these with the regular one and maybe mix them in with some cavalry.
You could grab one and then one of the other, grab some Dragon Princes, and you can just catch and kill any cavalry out there, or any lord even.
This is, pretty much like it's almost like a terror effect you could use on them. Although they are very expensive, 1,000 gold for leadership debuff.
Yeah.
For comparison, it's 225, and you're getting basically just the leadership debuff. I wouldn't say that's too worth
and
it.
armor piercing as well.
Well, I mean, compared to a regular.
The unit's also 82 speed for a land unit.
Yeah.
So they're almost as fast as hounds. It's also depending on what you're up against.
Like if you're against a high leadership, then that fear and leadership debuff doesn't come into help.
The Shadow Wars are better at skirmishing because of the fact that they're stock, so they can hide and not get shot by further range units. So if you have a unit that has 220 range, they can't shoot at them until the unit comes into range. So they're better for skirmishing against those units because they have to come into range before they can shoot.
Yeah.
Unless they have other cavalry supporting them.
Yeah, unless they've got cavalry. But even then, the regular, faction-specific ones won't do too well against cavalry either. So. Phoenixes. Fairly good with their rebirth ability. They can really come in clutch if they all of a sudden revive. They get their damage resist. They're a good terror causer, very similar to a Manticore in that regard. The Flamespire one gets access to a bombing effect, which can be really good at clearing out tight formations.
Front line.
Yeah, or front lines as well. Similar problem to an eagle in the fact that there are better single entities that you'd rather use your cap on. Just high elf have access to so many good single entities.
500 gold.
Yeah.
The problem with the Phoenix though is that you could blow up the front line, but let's say if you're against Bretonnia and they have 6 archers, they're gonna shred that Phoenix so quickly.
Only has 30 armor, no missile resistance, so it really gets shredded by missiles quite nicely.
So they just die.
Yeah. Same with the Frostheart Phoenix on the other hand. It has 80 armor. So it does definitely survive a lot better, but it lacks that bombing ability. Instead, just has a good constant AoE debuff. That is.
Yeah, it's good to get in the front line and really mess them up.
Yeah, and it has better stats as well. In all regards.
More expensive.
Yeah, more expensive as well, but arguably worth it, and more health as well. Which, when you're getting that rebirth effect, I'd say is pretty worth it fairly. Less speed and charge bonus as well, though, which is great. Moving on to the big old dragon. the Sun Dragon, the cheapest of the
Sun
three.
Dragon. If you're bringing it for the breath attack, and that's about it.
Yeah, that's about it. The stats.
It is the
dragons
better
aren't
Frost
great.
Worm.
Yeah, better Frostworm basically. Yeah, it's basically just the Frostworm but except for it actually has access to healing potential. So you can often see that with Alariel and Teclis and the likes, because just you can heal it, you can swoop it in, you can run it in and out. It is just what the Frostworm should be more like at the end of the day.
Then we got the Arcane Phoenix with
Arcane
the Tempest
Phoenix.
you could drop,
With the
which is really good for like blob fights,
Mm.
where you got a big group of units all fighting together. You just drop that down, whoosh, and there goes all those units.
Yeah, it doesn't do quite as much effect as like say a Burning Vortex would from a Flamecaster, but it can be good to drop on
But it's
people.
stationary, so it doesn't go into your own units.
No, yeah, that's true. That can be
That's
quite
the key
helpful.
thing. And when the units die, the other units will pile into the vortex anyway. So
Yeah, comparing it to a regular Flamespire Phoenix, just much better stats overall, so it's
And
much worth the
better armor.
healing. And it's got its ability, and it's got I think its rebirth is better. Or is it a different rebirth? Yeah, it's a different type of rebirth. Yeah, the Arcane Phoenix's rebirth does an explosion effect around it as well.
yeah,
And
and
does more
heals
healing more.
suddenly.
And it also has a 20% physical resistance compared to the regular one, which doesn't have that.
Yep.
So
Which,
just an overall way
hey,
better use of your single entity.
Yeah. Since
Anyway,
yeah, the next is you got
yeah,
the
single
Dragon.
entities, Moondragon.
Yeah, you want for high elves, you want to effectively use your single entities because that's kind of a big thing.
Yeah,
for
because you have so many
elves.
good ones available to you that you really don't
There's
want
so
to be
many
wasting
good
it.
ones.
Like you very rarely, I don't think you ever see a high elf army that doesn't use all of its single entity.
Yeah, arcane phoenixes or
Nobles and
dragons.
chariots are the main ones, or just whatever lord you bring. Usually bring him on a big dragon or something like that, or Teclis on his arcane phoenix. And just because your dragons and phoenixes are so good as well, you really want to be mindful of that.
And breath attacks.
Yeah, breath attack. The Moondragon breath attack very good against infantry. Does like seriously good damage.
Here's a real good tip if you want to piss off someone that you're playing against. You see their monster, net it, and then double dragon breath it.
I think that
watch it
works
disappear.
best with Star Dragon and the Sun Dragon. I think the Moondragon's
Yes.
more against the infantry. But yeah, you
Yeah,
do that. You do like because you do Teclis, who gives the fire resistance debuff with whenever he casts.
Yeah.
So you drop that, and then you do the breath, and you can delete almost anything like that.
Yeah, I remember when was it Outrider was was very upset about that. It's like
Just gets melted.
from
Yeah.
opponent, yeah. Like
Pretty
you can
sad.
melt a Shaygoth real fast.
Yeah, but for the basic chain of dragons, you're basically just paying more for more stats, but a slower dragon, basically.
Yeah.
If you compare the Sun Dragon to the Star Dragon, you're just getting a lot more health, which is very helpful, especially when you want to drop a lot of healing, because obviously it increases the healing
Less
cap.
charge bonus though.
Yeah, less charge bonus and speed though, but so a lot better in staying power. And
Yeah.
its breath attack is much more powerful compared to the regular one. Star
Maybe-
Dragon breath is huge explosion. Missed one in between though, the ROR Omen of Assyrian, who I actually can't remember what it
Yeah.
does. It gives immune to psychology to everything in range, which isn't too helpful with the
That's-
high elf faction, which
well-
already has really high leadership.
Yeah, it's not necessary.
Yeah,
it's
it's
kind of
really not, especially not for that price of
that's-
500
yeah.
extra gold. Oh my god, that's a lot of extra gold.
that's so much
For
money.
that, is
and
that it? That's all you get?
I think that's all you get.
Yeah, that's all you get. Yeah, I wouldn't say that's worth it in the slightest. It's
Like
a really
unless
nice
you got
ability.
like 3 uses of the Tempest, then
Yeah.
maybe.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, Ember Storm's still the exact same usage. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, it's kind of. I'd say
that's
this would be
very
good
disappointing.
if you have a
Underwhelming.
Skaven ally and then you can send it over to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. You can see that use, but on its own, no, I'd just bring a regular one. The
You could
stats aren't worth it. 500 gold, it's nowhere near worth it.
It is definitely not worth it because high elves don't run away from terror most of the time.
Yeah,
anyways,
so
unless
they're
you're-
not weak to that. in the
because
first
if your
place.
units are running away from terror, the battle has already gone too
Yeah,
poorly for
Because
it
at
to
that
matter.
point, all your martial prowess is gone and everything's dead. So,
Yeah.
final unit of the day, Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower.
Yeah.
We got there.
The best artillery unit in the game.
Debatable. This is questionable.
I know.
Of course, it's.
Oh wait, we have a question.
Ooh,
the only thing that you can't pair the Star Dragon is with another dragon, according.
Yeah, the banner
rules.
rules. Star Dragon is paired with It's got unique rules to that because of how many times. Because it shows just how powerful the single entity dragon usage is when they have to make specific rules to disallow Star Dragons with other dragons. It really just tells you everything.
So strong.
Yeah, about how good the single entities are. Because that's where their game is. That's why Eagles are just never brought, because of how better it is to use your single entity cap on that. Anyway, back to the bolt throwers. My throat's dying, so I need to die quickly.
Oh, quick.
You go through this.
It shoots bolts. Yeah, so there's two different types of rounds. Multi-rounds, like the Ushepti kind of scatter shot from the Regiment Renown. And then you have the single shot, which is good for taking out actual artillery pieces.
Yeah, very
and
good counter-artillery sniping. Often you'll see these against Vampire Coast because of how well they snipe all they out-snipe cannons most of the time. They out-snipe almost every artillery. They do out-snipe every artillery, I think.
Yeah, if you're up against an artillery-heavy faction, or if you want to watch a dwarf player cry and you snipe all of their super expensive artillery and their very special those iron, like the torpedo guys.
Yeah, torpedo guys, yeah. Yeah, most of the time with the bolt throwers, you'll be using the single shot just because it's used a lot more. The multi-shot is good if you run out of targets to shoot with the single shot, basically.
Yeah.
It doesn't tend to do too much damage, so ideally you're just using the single shot.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I guess that's really. All right. I guess that's.
That goes through the.
We could probably go through one replay, I guess.
No, I can't. Honestly, I can't.
No, not enough.
My throat's dying.
Oh,
I've done a lot of talking. Anyway, we usually go through the rosters on the first lesson anyway, so.
Okay. Yeah.
That'll next session we'll be going through replays and battle tactics for Bretonnia
and elves.
High elves. So if you have any specifically cool replays, be sure to ping us mentors with it, and I'll throw it into my collection.
Oh, would you bring
bolt throwers against Tomb Kings?
Tomb Kings?
It depends. If it's a good Tomb Kings player, don't, because I found this out that Arkan the Blacks.
They'll bring Carrion.
Yeah, no, not that. Spirit Leech destroys them.
Oh, yeah.
Really badly destroys. Like, okay, I think if you bring 3, you could do, because you can't Spirit Leech them all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't
Spirit
bring.
Leech one at a time.
You can't bring 1 or 2 and think, okay, well I kill all his caskets now, because you really don't, because Spirit Leech just destroys them really easily. Like, chances are 1 Spirit Leech will kill 2 bolt throwers models. That is. So it's not usually a good pairing. If you bring a triple, I say yes, or you basically go triple or nothing when it comes to against Tomb Kings. Yeah. All right. Well, I will stop the recording now. Thank you all for watching on the recording.
A big record. So many views.
Boom.
Many